Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Welcome in. Hey, Steve. How you doing, love?
Pretty good, Cisco. How are you?
Great, great, great. Do you want to do the honors and welcome some of this chat, this beautiful, lovely chat? Look, we got... Go ahead. You two, you start. Look at this. Woo!
A bunch of people here. Let me get them here where I can see it. Scroll up here.
I'm seeing Andrew. I feel like, what was that romper room? I see Andrew.
Magic mirror.
And Pseudonym.
I had to go hide once because I had a hole in my pajamas and she saw me with her magic mirror.
Oh, no.
Well, let's see. We got Patriot 174non. We've got Dylan, Creepy Unsolved, Christina Bell, Cisco, you're in the chat, Paradox Fossils, Todd Brown, Ray Wolf Paranormal. How you doing, Lindsay? Melissa Nicole, how you doing, love? Let's see. Who else? Scrolling down here. Uncommon Belief 21.
Yeah.
Jackie Canella. Hope I said that right.
Hey, Jackie. Hi, sweetheart.
Roseworthy 6. What's going on down here? Grandpa C is in the house.
I love you, Grandpa C.
And Sir Brian Bowden, how you doing? I've been wearing those T-shirts you sent me. Those are much appreciated. Thank you.
Very much. We love you, Sir Bowden.
Go check out his T-shirts. My favorite one is the Dancing Sasquatch that kind of takes off on the Grateful Dead, Dancing Bears, and then the Vitruvian Sasquatch.
Yes,
Leonardo
the one with the yes, absolutely. Go see him at Nobo Boomy and also in Inside the Goblin Universe on Podbean, and check those out because they're great shirts. They really are.
And let's see who else we got. Courtney CCH, Callie Snyder, all the way from Hawaii. How you doing, Callie? Sparky, Val Kimber.
Wow.
Almost said Val Kilmer, but it's Val Kimber. There's Laura Elizabeth. How you doing?
How you doing,
Laura?
Spark?
Good to see you.
Hi, Laura.
123. Oracles and Beyond. There's Cassie. Dev Bradley. I think we're caught up on the chat so far.
Oracles Beyond and Courtney. Hi, honey. How you doing? So just for everybody wanted to know, I looked into the whole tsunami thing because with everything going on in the world, what do you want? More cheese, right? So let's just put a tsunami in there. So I'm pretty confident right now. It seems like it's stabilized. I'm no expert, but I've got my eye on it, and we do have some plans and a route, and I suggest everybody do that. But tonight, what we're gonna do is Steve and I talked about it, and Steve's suggestion was do something that inspired you for the book, right, Steve? So, Laura, we have all these wonderful connections and networks, right? So, Laura was looking up something for a channel she was doing research for, and she came across, I think she's doing Alabama. And she pulled up Dead Children's Playground. She said, was this an inspiration for you at all? And and I'm like, boy, was it. Boy, was it. So thank you, Laura, for that, because you kind of inspired tonight. And I thought, ghost kids, Steve, I mean, what could possibly be?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Ghost
Hopefully,
kids.
Part of a museum won't fall on anybody.
Oh.
But, you never know.
Please, I mean, and we're still collecting for all those who are interested, still collecting things for the Titanic. That has not gone away. It just takes a while to gather all these things from different places.
Together.
Shipping for some of these things takes 3 months, no joke, depending on where it's coming from. So that has not been forgotten, and we're definitely thinking about doing something with KSPS as well as those in the chat, because they have all those Titanic relics right there, and Jim and Dave are, above reproach. their integrity knows no bounds. So it would be wonderful to have them be a part of it. So that's all still in the works, right, Steve? You got anything up your skirt? Yeah. What's going on?
Oh, I've always got something up my kilt.
I'm having such a good time already. I'm so excited. I can barely sit in my chair.
Is always tilted.
Do you want to hear a joke?
Girl toying to Neil Starlight.
Do we have any? Hey, Starlight, if we have any kids in the chat, please cover your ears. So, we've got, I always say I'm Native American, I'm Cherokee and Lenape, polluted with a little Scotch. No intention meant, but it's just supposed to be part of a joke. And I always say, like my daddy, because that's where the little bit of Scotch comes from. And Lord knows he had plenty. He liked the good stuff, 12-year-old and better. And he would definitely drink about 10 years out of a 12-year-old bottle of Scotch just about every day. But anyway, so the Murdoch clan goes way back, and we're, you say Murdoch in Scotland, supposedly they know it. So anyway, he likes to golf. Long story short, he's got the whole kit and caboodle, the kilt and caboodle. We've got a beautiful black wash with a tiny little, it's mostly black and gray and whites, and that's your dress, I guess, plaid. And we've got another one. And each has a nice little red running through it. It's really, really beautiful. And he's got the whole outfit, right? So when my niece got married, she got married, and all the guys had kilts, right? So he's real nervous, and he's about ready to go out father-daughter dance. Big whoop, deal. I mean, they live high on the hog on that side of the family. It's like champagne toasts every 5 minutes. You just imagine it was beautiful, beautiful wedding. And so anyway, he's up there real nervous, and I could hear his knees knocking, and he was about ready to get on the floor. And he looked at me and he says, don't do anything. He says, I really appreciate you keeping everything, kind of because I'm a little bit of a, as if you couldn't tell, a little bit of a rebel, right? So he said, I appreciate you, keeping everything, demure and everything like this. And I said, hey, bro, I said, what are you going to, answer somebody if they ask you anything like, what do you wear under that kilt? And he just looked at me and goes, don't do it. And I said, well, Sean Connery says on a good day, lipstick. And I pushed him out on the floor. Go dance with your daughter and have a good time. Quit taking life so damn serious. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Right, Steve? We're going to have a good old time. I mean, Kid Ghost kind of creeps everybody out for the right reasons, though. Because nobody wants to think about a child even coming to any harm or passing away at such a young age. That right away gets you, right? Mm-hmm. But then the added thing of being a ghost and being lost and being stuck, and we've both had experiences with that and plenty of stories and everything else. But being that we're having so much fun, I wondered if you would let me talk a little bit about alcohol tonight. Is that okay with you, Steve?
Sure.
A little bit of alcohol, because Steve again had his hand all in the part of the book with the moonshiners. We talked more about moonshiners, didn't we, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Copper coils and
family tradition on my father's side of the family. I've never cooked it myself, but I had plenty of relatives that did, and probably still do.
Mm-hmm. So we talked all about that. We talked all about how you test it, and how long the drip is and what goes in it and how long it would have to cure. I mean, every part of this book, Steve and I, I'd call him up and go ahead, crack that beer, Sparky. I'm gonna drink with you here in a minute. But we went through over every part of this, and Steve was just marveling the fact that when you hear a Chevy, 1953-55 Chevy pickup, the sound you hear is a 1953 Chevy pickup. We talked about golf carts, didn't we, Steve? We had to find a gas golf cart.
Had to find a particular golf cart to fit a certain specification there for your story, and we did it. And
it wasn't easy, was it, man? And we had to find a gas-powered one, because most of them are battery, yeah? Or, electric. Right? So when you hear that sound, it's that daggum golf cart. When you hear a bird sing and I say that's that bird call. So, I mean, this got in depth. So, of course, you're not going to cut any corners on the moonshine. So,
we had a crash course with moonshine. We were ready to be moonshiners. We knew how to brew it, how to build the still, how long to cook it for, how long to set those
yep.
coils to drip it off, when to pour your mash off.
The whole thing.
We knew the whole thing.
Well, the whole thing, man, the whole thing. You know, working it in a cave, and how would you get the exhaust out, keep it cool in the cave, and how would a couple of let's just say country boys in the mountain, how they would do it, and the rigs they would have set up. So it's just all in depth. So that brings me to last week and week before, we had bacon caramel popcorn, because we were going to share recipes and share thoughts, and everybody have snacks for the storytelling, the ghost storytelling, and Halloween, and just part of the family and the community, and it makes you feel good when y'all eat together. So we're basically doing this, we're munching together. So we did the bacon caramel popcorn. You saw that, didn't you, Steve?
I listened in, yeah.
There you go.
Didn't get to participate that time, but I heard about it.
But you heard about it. So we've got a backup for that, and if it's all right with Mr. Stockton, I'm going to go ahead and play that right quick. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Let her rip, man. Here we go. This is for your adult beverage partaking. Here we are. Well, there you go.
that sounded good. I can't imagine drinking more than one or two of them, though.
Here you go right here. Look at there. Can you see it? Apple pie moonshine in a mason jar. Boy, I'll tell you what.
That's the only way to drink it is out of a mason jar.
We go to every. There's no extent we won't go on this show, Steve, to help our chat and everything else. So, I'll tell you what. I have taste tested it. The apples that are in it are fantastic. A little cinnamon stick, I mean, what's more Halloween? And in a mason jar. You've got the rim. You've got the brown sugar. I use honey to make it stick. So, let me taste it. That'll do her. That'll absolute do her.
Go ahead. Pound it back. We'll have a fun show.
I'm going to do it. We're going to have a fun show. I guarantee, because that's, woo. It's got the Fireball. I used,
I'm drinking Diet Mountain Dew. I'm
well, that'll do it, too.
Weakling today. But that's where Mountain Dew, that's another name for Moonshine.
So at least you're keeping it with the theme, right? All right. And
yeah.
we got the Madagascar Vanilla Vodka right here, as you guys can see. All right. So it's extra sweet. You can also use the whipped cream one. The recipe is in tonight's show in the description. There's actually, I loaded a video there, not me, but somebody else putting it together. So if you guys want to do it for, no, we're not going to do whippets, Brian. So if you, want to have that, it goes great with the bacon caramel popcorn. There's a version in there for the kids, and there's also a frozen version if you want to make that, if you like the slushy kind. Pseudonym says, do the do. Just do the do. So that's that. because what we're going to do tonight, I talked to Steve about it. We're going to do kind of a quickie for us anyway. The Ghost Kids, and then we're going to do part 2 because part 2 was so short. I wanted to go ahead and do part 2 and part 3. So Steve might stay for some of that. He might, fall asleep because my voice puts him to sleep.
It does. I don't sleep much, but she can knock me out. When she was writing recording this, she would call me and say, "Oh, you got to listen to this part. You got to listen to this part." And then I'd hear Steve. Like, oh, she's like, "What do you remember?" And I tell her the last part I remembered. She'd start playing it again, and her husband Mario the same way.
Same way. He hasn't heard it yet.
20 seconds.
You can. Oh, that is so good when you get the cinnamon, and I use sugar in the raw, so it's a little coarser. You know what I mean? Tastes really good with the cinnamon sugar around the edge too, and a little bit of honey.
A few more people I want to say hi here too. My Aunt Edna.
Hey!
In the chat, and
He miss.
Melissa Nicole is with us.
Hey, Melissa.
Hopefully she's going to join me tonight over on 13 past midnight for Ghost Stories at midnight. And we got Janet Sanchez, my little brown elf there. How you doing, Jeanette? Good to see you.
Well, they're having all kinds of things here. Something is Steve Benadryl. Something as a date drug. I don't know what that one. It went by so fast I couldn't say. Somebody's
date or drug is Benadryl.
No, okay.
you give Benadryl to me, I'm going to sleep for 6-7 hours. That's the only way I can actually sleep like a normal human is to take Benadryl. And then when I get up, I'm like all fogged in, medicine head.
Oh,
takes a while. Can't get up, can't stay awake, get the cobwebs out.
Well, here's to old Jeb and old Skeet and Mrs. Magee, too. And I'll tell you guys are going to love all three of them, especially Mrs. Magee. She's just a hoot, absolute hoot. So we're going to do part 2 and part 3. And that's going to be about an hour and a half or so. So just letting you guys know it. If you fall asleep or you got to work tomorrow, you can always catch up and watch the rest of it, tomorrow. You have plenty of time in between. So there you go. So Ghost Kids, Steve, what do you think about Ghost Kids? Have you seen any videos, story
I've seen Ghost Kids.
I know, me too.
And I've seen videos and stuff. In fact, that was my first encounter with a ghost ever. When I was between 5 and 6 years old. I saw the ghost of a toddler run across the street, catty-cornered, entire yard about 10 feet, fell down and disappeared. And to this day, I have no idea. I did all kinds of research as an adult on that road, and that road was named after my mom's family. They'd had a dairy farm there for decades. Nobody could ever think of any small child that had been killed on that road or anything. So it was either like a time slip or he ran out from behind a car that had stopped at the stop sign, thinking it might have been something that was attached to that car. Maybe somebody had him in the trunk at some point. I don't know. But I can still see the little fellows wearing, this was popular back in the 60s, had the little blue shorts, matching suspenders, little white shirt, matching blue ball cap, and white shoes. And toddler, the kids, when they've just barely mastered the art of walking, they'll start running sometimes and don't really know how to stop. So they just fall. That's exactly what he did. And
just tumbled in. Just disappeared into the ground. Now, I never really asked you this. Did he kind of just materialize into the ground, or like he hit the ground and was gone? Did he kind of fall into the ground like it looked like he fell down, or did he just fall and just the ground ate him up?
It looked like the ground ate him up. And I even went out there with a shovel.
I know.
And tried to dig, but there was no place there was no hole, no place that a kid can fall, and it was all solid ground.
Incredible.
Under there.
It's incredible. And I've teased you over the years and said, we both had stuff like that happen. You haven't let go of the shovel. You've been digging ever since, trying to get answers. And all we keep digging up was more questions.
That was really what set me on the path. I'd had some experiences before that, some weird stuff when I was around 3 and 4. But that one, it didn't scare me a bit. It was just like, what was that? That's not supposed to happen. Little kids don't run through the yard and disappear. And it just kind of, that's what set me on my path that I'm still on 50-something years later.
Thank goodness for that little kid. And I'm hoping that it was like a time slip, like an echo, like a memory, because who wants to think of a kid out there by himself just, being ate up by the ground. It doesn't make any sense that he'd be running like maybe he ran across the street. But we know, because you have another story too about. Do you remember the one where the man was being haunted by a boy coming in the window and a boy running up the stairs and all this, and then this older man in his 35 comes by and says something, I used to live here, blah, 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 I wanted to see the old place. And somehow they got to talking about, have you ever seen any ghosts or anything like that? And he told him about it. And what happened after that, Steve?
Yeah, it was weird. The guy had grown up in this house. I absolutely loved it. Didn't want to move. It was built when he was like just a small child, just like a few months old. So he'd spent his whole life there up until his teenage years when they moved away, and he just never got over it. And he would go back by there often and drive by and look at it and things because it was only a few miles away. And one day he saw somebody out there, and he thought, I'm going to stop and talk to the current resident here. He did. He stopped, pulled in the driveway, talked to the guy, and he was telling me, this was my room, and that was my mom and dad's room, and this was the spare bedroom, and we watched TV in here, and all this. And the guy said, don't laugh at me. He said, but I want to ask you something. He said, when you lived here, did you ever see a ghost? And the guy said, no, not that I'm aware of. And he said, let me tell you what's going on here. And the man proceeded to tell him, that they built this house when I was a kid, so unless the ghost was already here, nobody had died in that house. And he said, it started right after I moved in. He said, I started seeing this little boy. I'd see him in the basement. I'd see him upstairs. I'd see him run down the hallway. I even saw him out in the yard. And he'd just giggle and take off, and I never could catch him. He said, I thought he was getting in through the window and just some of the neighborhood kids messing around. But really, where it was, there were no neighborhood kids. And the guy that had lived there, that had grown up there, was just flabbergasted and said, well, tell me more. And the more the guy described this little boy, the man got an idea. He said, I want to go home and get something. I'll be back in about 20 minutes. I've got something I want to show you. So he goes, comes back. He's got a shoebox. And he takes some pictures out of it, lays them out. And the man that currently lives in the house said, that's him. That's the little son of a gun right there. That's the kid I see in the house and in the yard and in the basement. And the man says, that's me when I was 5 years old. So his love of that house and never getting over it and whatever attachment he had there, it created some sort of thought form or tulpa or doppelganger. His 5-year-old self was still there and haunting the house.
Yeah. And that's just it. We've talked about many a time where people are seen haunting a house that are alive and in jail, and we know that, they're alive. It's an imprint of some kind in some cases. That's why this subject is so interesting, because the layers of this onion, and, Steve and I have been peeling this onion for a long time. I haven't found a center yet, and I don't know what's in the center. I don't know where the answers are.
If you get to the center, it's going to say, see next onion.
See next onion, no joke. Right? But that's two stories right there that gives you an idea that in some cases, maybe a kid loved going through whatever they were doing at that time, that they made that imprint, and of course we talked about water being a conduit. We talked about granite and stone, stone theory, where it kind of like takes an imprint of it and replays it back. We don't know why, but that's just a little something to go into tonight thinking about it. Some of these kids just could be, they were happy at that time and it imprinted. But now some of them, I don't think are that, Steve. I think some are downright ghosts. I think
some are truly ghosts and truly there for a reason. There's been
absolutely
some interruption in their life or something tragic that's happened, and that's where they've gone back to, or where they've gotten stuck.
Stone tape theory, that's it. Absolutely. Well, I have a little short one here, a little video I put grabbed for y'all. I've never seen it before, and I think it's very compelling. We'll probably run it a couple times. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Steve, so I'm going to pop it up here. Take a look at this. Now, I want you to keep your eye at the door. This is a video of a server. Anybody that's ever served in a restaurant, you know what that's like, closing down at night, resetting tables and everything. It gets lonely. Yeah, it gets, lonely. I've been a bartender closing up all by myself and been in haunted bars. I know what this is like.
I've been a waiter before.
But I'll tell you what, these CCTV cameras and, people putting out these field trail cams and stuff like that, and the CCTV and all that, we're really catching a lot of good ghost things. So I definitely, Courtney, you're a server, so you know what it is. Well, you might want to keep the lights on when you're setting tables after this one. But let's see what we got here. Now keep your eye at the door. What do you see? Look at that.
Oh, here I'm looking at the wrong. There we go. I'm running behind. I'm lagging.
It's going to run it a couple times. Right where the red circle is, you'll see the server putting up. And she said she thought she was in the room with her and felt someone behind her. She doesn't believe in ghosts, but that footage is pretty compelling. Look at the little girl. You can see her little pinafore with her little slip coming out. You see her arm coming down. You see she has long hair. She turns around, she looks back, and she walks right there in front of that door. Look at that. Did y'all see that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. And with the first part of this, you can see her walking through. You see almost like she's got long hair. And she kind of stops and hesitates, comes back, and you can see the little slip under her dress, like a little pinafore. You see what I mean?
Yep.
That's amazing to me. I don't know what you think about that. Now, that could be exactly what we were talking about, Steve. That could just be an echo in time, or one of our chats said it so apropos a couple of weeks ago, a death echo. That's the first time I ever heard that. I think that's a great name for a band, by the way.
Yeah,
but,
that would be.
That's a hoot of a name for a band. But I'll tell you what, sipping on this, I'm telling you, I'm getting a little tingly too. I might leave an impression.
You may start seeing tonight. Spirits here in a minute.
Yep. So love the spirits. I'm going to take that one off. But isn't that something? That was one of the most amazing videos of the ghost. You see the whole outline, and I don't think that one's faked at all. I really don't. I mean, I never look at these as fake or not, because you could have 10 ghost videos and 9 of them are faked, but that one that's real. So I believe it. I think it's wonderful that it was caught. And my first thing is somebody needs to go help that little girl, right, Steve? Mm-hmm. Now in the book, we definitely, like I said in the beginning, Laura mentioned a Dead Children's Playground. Now, Dead Children's Playground is in Alabama. It's in Huntsville, Alabama, and it's right off of Maple Hill Cemetery. Now, why they put a playground here, I couldn't tell you. There's lots of stories of why they did it. They put it up for, because there was so much land and that, kids could go play. And then there's the backstory that you hear around and, from the elders and stuff. They said, no, they put that up for the dead children to play, because there was so many children there that had died from, I think it was scarlet fever. And so many had passed, they put them in a mass grave there. So back in the day, they put up a little playground for the kids as a memorial. And a couple decades later, it creeped people out, so they tore it down. And the town got so angry that they tore it down, that they put up another one. So you're going to see what looks like a little bit more of a modern-y kind of looking one, with more of like that play school kind of feel to it. But these swing on their own. Children are heard laughing and rustling through the leaves. And I got a nice little video here so you can see it. We can talk over this one, Steve, if you like. So here you go. Maple Hill Cemetery and Dead Children's Playground. And definitely, this is the one that's in the book, except the one that's in the book is up on the mountain. There's a playground right outside the RV park there that's on the top of the mountain, right before you get to the cabins. And that's the one I talk about, and I just call it this one. But this one's not far from the top of the mountain. So here we go. Just a little look. This is a nice aerial view. It's beautiful with the dogwoods blooming. And you see, it's a very old cemetery, lots of room.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm trying to look around my camera and my microphone here where I can see it.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Those old tombstone statuesque is amazing to me.
And shout out Bigfoot and On, Connor, my brother. Welcome in. Hope you're doing good.
How y'all doing? Yes, Roseworthy, it breaks my heart as well. A lost child looking for help. Well, I was lucky enough to be able to help one about 4 weeks ago. Little Carla, she's absolutely a doll. She was stuck about 100 years, but we got her to the light. We got her to the light. Thank the angels. So you see plenty of mausoleums like this, that old artisanship, you know. These things always, the statues just get me. That one with the weeping angel just breaks my heart every time I see it. She was dead, sweetheart. She'd been dead for about 100 years. Her mother drowned her in a tub, and she was afraid to cross into the light because she was scared of her mama, but we got her across. So that was at the Hoover House. Poor little girl. And, you know, you got all the old trees. Alabama is really beautiful. I think every state has its beautiful spots, you know. I can't imagine what one of those things would cost now, one of those statue there. So this is actual Dead Children's Playground. You see what I mean? They've got a little bit more modern stuff now. But nobody plays there except at night. And this is what it looks along the side, all that beautiful Alabama rock. It's right there, you know, with the base of the mountain. I can't tell you how many of those rocks I had in my yard. Brought some here to New Jersey. So that's it. Just looks like a regular good old playground, but you just can't see the people that are playing on them. You can see the swings moving with no wind. You could, you know, you hear them, like I said, especially along that rock wall. They hear kids running and laughing and running along, and they see the leaves, much like when you were chasing the ditch of leaves, Steve. You know,
the thing came out of the ditch. After me. But those playgrounds, I've seen them in other places. When I was out in when I lived in Las Vegas, there was one out there that I went to, and I saw those swings move. And regardless of wind, no wind, and sometimes in the desert at night, it's absolutely still. There's nothing stirring. And one would be swinging, or maybe one swinging a lot bigger than the other.
Right.
And supposedly there were some children that were murdered and their bodies left in that park. And then just a little further south of Las Vegas in Henderson, there's a place down there, Fox Ridge Park, that has a haunted playground. So you think about that. If you're kids and you're still here, you're stuck behind or whatever's going on, and you're out wandering and you see a playground, you're going to go play. I mean, that's
right.
That's what a kid would do.
I just think it's so intriguing that some people got creeped out, tore it down, and then people got so offended by that they all collected money to set it up and give it back to them. How about that? You know, I mean, you know, places in the South, the people, you know what I mean? They're just kinder, and they take a little more time to, you know, I mean, I lived there as long as I lived in New Jersey. You know, I feel like I'm half and half, you know. Yeah. But it was something. It really was something. I'll tell you what, this apple pie moonshine, woo! It's so good. It goes down so easy.
Towing to Neil can attest to all that, too. She's from Kingsport.
There you go.
Born and raised. There's a lot of weird stuff down south. I've been to Alabama. I used to spend a lot of time in Scottsboro.
Oh, yeah. I live right by there.
Skyline. They've seen Bigfoot and stuff out there.
Me too.
One of my favorite things, though, it's not haunted, but it could be unclaimed luggage.
I love that place. I love that
about
place.
That. What if you got somebody's luggage that had passed on? Would they haunt their suitcase?
You know, it's possible, but I absolutely love that place. You go in there and buy just about anything because all it is basically luggage that got lost, and they tell you they got lost, and then it winds up in unclaimed luggage.
You go through, you might get anything.
Yep, absolutely anything. It's like a Goodwill on steroids, you know.
From, dirty underwear to a camcorder.
Absolutely.
I know people have gotten both.
Probably in the same luggage, Steve. Oh, gosh. All right. Look. Oh, they're talking about the bacon again. Yes, we had that last week. Bacon caramel popcorn. And I'm telling you, it is so good. Now, make up what you're going to eat, because what I did with the leftovers, I made popcorn balls. You know, just squeeze them together. They made great popcorn balls. So think about that for the kids, for the grandkids, for yourself. But, man, bacon and caramel together. And along with this apple pie moonshine, you got yourself a Halloween in the making right there. I'm telling you, Steve. But so that's Dead Children's Playground. It's definitely in the book. The one that I describe in the book is a little bit more creepy along the lines of the original one before they tore it down, because it was pretty rickety, and there's a little bit of something to be said about what do you call the merry-go-round that you push yourself? How many times have teenagers gone to a playground at night. Your friends just spin you till you're about sick to your stomach.
Till you fly off of it. I've had that
Oh my
happen.
God. Yep. But those rickety, rusty ones that just when the wind blows them and they just creak and
You
rusty.
hear that creak.
Yeah. That's the one that's in the book. So there's that. Okay, let's see what else I got. I've got one more that I thought was one of my favorite in the kid ghost thing. And now you guys might recognize this, but it's the one where the kid went to Savannah. Every city like that says it's the most haunted city in America, but I think every city is the most haunted in America. They're all over the place. The ghosts are everywhere. It's just, But anyway, Savannah has a good way of promoting this stuff. So anyway, at the cemetery, I forget the name of it, but you'll see it here. And see if you recall this one.
And out of the corner of the camera, this kid caught my eye.
He says a child running after a shadowy woman.
Couldn't even see her face, so I just focused on this kid.
He says the figure suddenly jumped onto a tree. Moments later, it dropped and disappeared.
Couldn't even see her face, so
I tried to get a closer up look on this. Now see him there? He's way in the back.
He
He's
says
gonna.
the figure suddenly jumped onto a tree.
There it is.
Moments later, it dropped and disappeared.
Wow.
Nobody's paying any attention to him. You can look at that video over and over and over again, and you'll see like the people don't turn to look in that direction. A kid jumping out of a tree. What do you think of that one, Steve? Had you seen that one before?
Yeah, I've seen that one before. That's really, really creepy. And like you said, and that was the same way when I saw the ghost kid, the man in the car that had stopped at the intersection there. He didn't even acknowledge. He didn't, think, oh, there's a kid in the road. He didn't look
Nothing.
the direction. So I think that things like that happen. Some people can see it. Some people can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Courtney's right. She says right here, oh my God, that was creepy. They didn't even look. They had no clue. This is what I'm talking about, because usually when you're looking at these videos, you're watching the animals. If there's an animal in the video, what is the animal doing? Does the cat see it? Does the dog see it? The people that, now they're walking by, they're not even looking at this kid jumping out of a tree. I mean, a little kid that would look pretty small, you would be concerned as a parent pushing believe they were pushing a baby carriage, just a nice day at the cemetery, I guess. But, so anyway, that's one of the parts that convinces me as well. And the kid who caught it, I believe he was 17 at the time. I think it was like 2008, something like that. He said that the thing that caught his eye when he was videotaping was kind of a woman, a silhouette of a woman that had no face he could see. And then he caught the kid chasing behind her.
I just got a chill.
Go
Anything
figure.
with no face
No
scares
face.
the dickens out of me.
Yeah, you don't see her too much. Everybody focuses on the kid, but it's just a little bit of almost like a see-through-y outline of a person that's a little bit taller walking right before the kid, but your eye automatically goes to the smaller ghost. But that one, I don't know how we see it, and they did somehow oracles. It's the videotape. I guess Steve could explain that better than I can, because you've been a photographer.
Different frequencies and things that the human eye can see, and a lot of this technology can see things that we can't. Remember a few years ago, probably a decade or so ago, there was a big scandal when they found out that a certain model of Sony video camera with I think it's a non-density filter on the lens, you could see through women's clothing and see their underwear or less, or whatever they had on under there. And it's just one of those things, the camera could see it, but the human eye couldn't. And it's just because
Right.
it's the right frequencies and the right frequency of the light, in other words. And
Yes, and that was in Savannah, Georgia. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
but it's a thing that happens, and I think that's why a lot of times stuff is caught on tape that nobody ever sees, because of the frequency it vibrates at. And I think Bigfoot and on there will agree with me. I believe Bigfoot is capable of altering its frequency to either
Yes.
lower or higher vibration, and that's why it's able to hide and cloak itself.
I believe that too.
And that would be the same thing with the Glimmer Man, the predator creature, things like that. If it can change the way it vibrates. And I knew a guy in Las Vegas that claimed he could change his vibration to where the security cameras wouldn't pick him up. And he demonstrated it for me, and by God, you couldn't see him on the security cameras.
Incredible.
But he would have to concentrate, and he could only do it for a few seconds at a time. But he would be in one place, you watch him on the camera, then he shows up in another place he did not pass by on camera.
That's incredible, man. And, you know, I've seen stuff like that happen. I can't explain it. That's incredible. But that, you know what it reminds me of? You're going to laugh. Do you remember the old Barney Miller show?
Mm-hmm.
You know, good old, had one of the best baseline opening songs ever. And I mean, that back in the 70s, that show was so cool. But they had a guy on, I can't remember his name, he was the smart one with the glasses that was always smarter than everybody. And he was kind of like the one that would talk about aliens and UFOs and all that. Well, there was this one episode where they were trying to prove that a lie detector test, you know, was, you know, valuable to use. And he sat there and he just calmed himself down and slowed his heart rate and controlled his nerves. And he was saying he was an alien from another planet and all this other stuff. And old Wojciechowicz was losing his mind because he thought he was a real alien. But he just was able to control it. You see what I'm saying?
I've seen people do that where they would have two nurses taking the guy's pulse, and he could make his heartbeat completely stop in one arm or the other, or make it go in different rhythms and things. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. So there's people that have unusual talents and things. I don't know what use that would be, but as far as being able to change your vibration to where you could hide momentarily, that could be of lots of use. That would be something I think that the government was probably, you know, if they do like the remote viewing and stuff like that, I'm sure they've looked into stuff like that. And I think that's what some of these Glimmerman predator type creatures are. I think it's some sort of government technology that allows things to not be seen. And I know they have like the hardware technology. They've got an invisibility cloak. But I think if they could do it without any hardware tech, like a Bigfoot, then that would be the way to go.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. The other thing is this chat is just so smart. They're throwing out all these things here. We've got Roseworthy saying, I think the brain works as a type of kind of like a break. That got away from me real quick. I wanted to say it. As type of a break to filter our personal reality. Sure, because that's, again, we've talked about ghosts that we've been able to talk to and, you know, have communicate with at least. And it seems to be sometimes they're like in that boxed reality, like they're seeing something totally different than you think they're seeing. And Uncommon Belief here says Bigfoot is so big yet so elusive. I agree. You know, and all of these things can be true. We're just scratching the surface on this stuff. Steve, but what about this? Now, this is even creepier than having ghost kids running around and giggling, and, you know, all of those break my heart. The orphanage in Gettysburg, for instance, I won't even walk on the same side of the street. When I go in there, it's going to be to try to cross those kids and get them away from those that are holding them back. It just makes me sick to my stomach to think about it. And Vasila X Murder House is another one for me. It just makes me sick to my stomach. So bad. But what about the ones who are portraying themselves as kids but aren't kids? They're an entity that is portraying itself like that, so you'll trust it so they can get their hooks in you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what I think the black-eyed kids are in some respects. It's not a kid at all, but something that appears as a kid, like Whitley Strieber and his owls he talked about. When he had these encounters with the Greys or whatever they were, he remembered seeing owls, but then under hypnotic regression, they were entities, and he was only remembering our owls. It was like a false memory that they'd placed in his head, or either that or something that his brain had put there just to kind of block the trauma from seeing something that you're told doesn't even exist. So,
wow.
So I think there's entities out there that can mimic. I mean, you have that all through your indigenous people stuff. The Native Americans, they have several different entities that can mimic your family or your grandma, you know, whoever. And that was like Spearfinger. That was one of the reasons for where you hold your hand up and say how as a greeting, so they can see the palm of your hand, because
absolutely,
Spearfinger and other entities, their heart was in their palm, And if you'd been away from the teepee too long, they wanted to make sure it was you and
That it
not
was you.
something pretending to be you or that had taken over you.
Absolutely true. And Jackie here says, I always thought the Bigfoot as an interdimensional and travel through wormholes and vortexes. I do too. And, I think that there might be a couple of kinds. I believe in the book, I have it like both, because I think over time some maybe decided to stay here a little longer, and I have it explained in a kind of a special way in the book, but that's the way I put it, because that's the way I was taught as a Native American. They're half here and half in the spirit world, and again, broad brush, you can't really fit everything into a category, so you kind of got to keep an open mind about how they're doing that. Are they cloaking? Are they doing all of those things? Can be true at the same time, Steve. It doesn't have to be one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, indeed. And again, getting back to that light thing, when you look at the spectrum that's visible to humans, it's such a small little vector there. If you looked at all the light there is, all the different frequencies and spectrums, there's no telling what's out there that we can't see because of our limited vision in that spectrum. Then you have things like FLIR, you have the other infrared and stuff like that, the things that can see different speeds or types of light. And then I think there's probably types of light that we don't even know about. There's probably whole other dimensions and all kinds of creatures that coexist right along with us, and sometimes for whatever reason, kind of like the stone tape thing,
Right.
they're able to appear or manifest just for a brief time, either willingly or unwillingly. And you think about that, like the stone tape thing, it's not such a far stretch if you look at like a videotape or a cassette tape, recording tape, audio tape. It's mylar, plastic, with ferrous oxide particles adhered to it. And then you run that through the tape heads. One head records, one plays it back. So that's not too far of a stretch to think that granite or natural elements could do that. Now, there's no mechanism for recording it and playing it back at will, but I think sometimes, if the weather conditions or humidity or whatever is just right, that's
Crystal?
how that happens.
Big old
Yeah,
crystal.
Crystal, look at what you can do with a crystal. You can put a crystal in a watch. It'll keep the time. You can take crystal and make a radio set out of it. Crystals have energy. They vibrate. They have frequencies in them. I had somebody one time that didn't believe that you could build a crystal radio set. And I'm like, years ago, that's all they had.
This is what they had.
Radio, you get a little crystal somewhere, some
Absolutely.
copper wire and a nail and a little tube. Put so many winds around there in that copper wire, and use a razor blade and a thumbtack for your tuner.
That was it.
That's how the guys in World War One and probably parts of World War II listened to the radio in their foxholes.
Isn't that something?
And kids out in the country. My dad talked about
Yep.
building one when he was a kid out of an oatmeal box and would listen to the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday nights.
Man, that's so true, because I remember those crystal radio kits from Radio Shack. That was like what do you call that when you go through? It's just like a milestone in your life as a kid to do that.
Yeah, I built one in Cub Scouts, I think.
Yep,
we made
and
a
wasn't there like
radio.
a potato radio or something like that too? There was some kind of weirdness out there that
Something you
included a
could do
potato.
that powered a potato. It was powered by a potato, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, there was something like that,
Clock or something, a quartz clock, I think, that it was powered by
Yeah.
potato.
Yeah, something along those lines. Well, that's crazy, but that gets me with the kids, because I was on, one of the stories I tell. It's actually, like two cases combined, but, everybody was talking about, well, we have, first of all, everybody in this chat, if you don't know by now, you will soon enough. It bothers the heck out of me that people have ghosts and they think they're pets, and they do all this stuff and they assume they know, and they're calling them by name, because this one was a little girl had passed, and probably many decades back, of some kind of fever, and they just assumed the little girl that they were seeing was this girl, and they called her by that little girl who died in the house's name, and they have no idea from Adam who this is. They're just seeing her, and they say, oh, well, that's Mary, and she died of rheumatic fever back in the day, and that bedroom upstairs, and she comes, and she, she scares the dog, and sometimes she'll pull my hair, and she'll do this, and sometimes she talks to me, and she'll be standing by my bed, and I'm like, yeah, guess what? Not Mary. because they had told this story so much that the entity that was in the basement, the dark entity that was really a negative one that had been around for eons, was trying to get into this family through this little girl, and using that to gain their trust, and you know how the story goes. Basically break down the family, and then the next thing you know, everybody's possessed and things are flying around your dog's flying around the living room, and doors are banging and opening, and people are diving for the car and spinning out of there and leave all their stuff behind. Now, that's another story that reminds us of what? 28 days. It happened at a little place called Amity, New York, Long Island. And the Lutz family stayed in that house for, I believe it was 28 days. Now, when that book came out, I think it was Jay Anson wrote it. If I have his name wrong, I apologize.
Yeah,
but
it.
I remember when that book came out, it had to be like 78, I'm going to guess. And I remember walking through the mall and seeing the big display up front, Amityville Horror. I had to have the book, And my aunt and uncle bought it for me, and I started reading that book. Now, I devoured books when I was a kid. And much as I do now, I mean, you just can't read it fast enough. And I'm reading all the things that happened in this house, and I realized that there was a lot of talk about how it was embellished or this or that. But I can tell you, as I've said in the show before, I think a lot more happened in that house than people are letting go now. And I think most of the worst stuff wasn't even in the movie or in the book. And that's just where I'm sitting at this point. Whether or not the people that are seeing things now means nothing. It means nothing. But those people moved in, and with their kids and everything else, moved out in the middle of a storm and hit the car and took off, and that was it. Left everything behind. That means something, because that's a lot to do. Now, the horror that happened before that in this little house with, I believe the sign hanging out in front of the driveway said High Hopes.
High Hopes, yep.
High Hopes, wasn't it? And then those windows, right? They look like eyes. Well, they've changed the windows since.
Iconic windows, yeah. The windows are totally different. Now they're square.
Right. But Ronald DeFeo, and this is one of those times where I really think the devil did make him do it. Now, that doesn't mean he was innocent. That doesn't mean that he didn't have something to work on. And again, I put that in the book. What if you've got cracks in your windshield? What do I mean by that? What if you're already like a drug addict? What if you're abused to the point of your mind is broken in a way, your spirit's broken in a way, and these entities have a way of getting in and working on that to make you do things that you wouldn't really do, like maybe saying things in your mind like, what did he mean by that? I don't trust him. What's he up to? Just little things like that enough would make somebody go crazy. And again, I believe in jumpers. I still say that there's probably people in prison right now accused of a crime that have no memory whatsoever of it, for whatever reason. And it wasn't that they were doing so much drugs or drank so much they couldn't see straight. They were jumped. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, there's just so many different ways that can go, so many different explanations. And you mentioned Amityville, and there was a very famous photo, I think the Warrens took this, of a ghost boy that looked like one of the kids. I don't know. I'm trying to share that. I don't know if you can see it.
I got it right here, baby. I got it right here if I can find it. Because that's the one that always, always, always gives me the creeps.
Yeah, there it is.
That one right there.
That's one of the scariest photos I've ever seen. And this was after all that had happened, when the house was empty, and they were in there looking around. And that it's some little boy. I don't know if it's John DeFeo or not, but the kid's eyes glowing like that. That gives me chills every time I see it.
That one gives me the full-on creeps. And you can even see, to me, look between the bars of the stairs, Steve. It almost looks like he's kneeling down. You can almost see his little knees folded under, and it looks like he's wearing a little flannel shirt. Everybody that was in the room when this picture was taken has sworn up and down that they didn't do anything. This was again after the book, and there really wouldn't have been a whole lot of reason to do this and fake it. But I look at this and I don't see fake. I see heartbreak to me. This
That,
kid
or
was shot in his sleep.
I almost think it's like some sort of demonic entity
Yes.
that's
Pretending to be.
mimicking the child. Yeah,
Could
because
be.
it looks evil. Of course, I
There's-
might look evil too if I'd been shot to death in my bed.
But that one gets to me every time when I see it. And, we couldn't let a night on Kid Ghosts go by without bringing up that photo, because I feel the same way Steve does. There's something I feel when I see that. And it's
Yeah,
not
that one
just...
It's a different kind of terror that tugs at you with that one. It's just like if you're in there and saw something, I'd lose my mind probably. I'd go out the window. I wouldn't bother with
I
the
would too.
stairs.
I've seen some shit. And that's the kind of thing that just gets you, because, again, I don't know if it was just something that came through and is portraying to be that child. If it is that child, then the child stuck, went through horrific things. Him and brothers and a sister too, right? They were all shot.
Yeah.
I think there was 4. I could be wrong on that. But the whole thing is awful. But if you know anything about how evil slips in and gets into, and just affects everything it touches, it's going to hit the weakest one. Ronald DeFeo was, obviously on drugs. He drank a lot. He was mad at his dad. I think his dad might have been mixed up in the mafia, something like that. I'm not sure. I know he's connected in one way or another. And, didn't get the attention, didn't get the approval. And the next thing you know, it's drugs, and it's the talking in the ear, and it's, all that. What did he say? What did he mean by that? All that kind of thing. They did find a lot of, from what I understand, drugs and things in his closet in the wall. They found that room at the base, at the basement. The dog was scratched out. That's true.
The red
as well.
room.
Yeah. So it could have been that he was into a Satan worship. I keep getting sugar. I still got sugar all on my lips. So good, this thing. But that was the thing too. So that kind of leads you to believe that it's possible there was a little bit of devil made me do it in that one. I really
Well, he even
believe
claimed that there was a dark entity, a dark man in the basement that handed him the rifle and told him, you know what you need to do, you know what you've got to do, and sent him upstairs to kill his family.
Yep. And how they all were asleep like that and didn't
And they
wake up.
stayed asleep. Yeah, they killed the parents first. I can see maybe killing one parent, but isn't the other one going to jump up and see what's going on?
Something's up, man.
And then the 2 smaller boys, I think they were in the same bed or in the same bedroom. And then the sister. Now, there's been some theories that the sister helped him kill the rest of the family, and then he killed her, that there was supposed to be like a murder-suicide thing, and then he didn't follow through on his part.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, but still.
Yeah. And you know what Todd Brown is saying here, that human monsters are worse. Absolutely. They absolutely are. The things human beings do to each other are unconscionable. Absolutely unconscionable. But there is another thing pushing. There's definitely a dark side and a light side that kind of pushes and helps and pulls. And, I think your will is your own up to a certain point. Because once you're broke down like that, I've seen people change right in front of me. I've seen people, I don't know if you guys have ever seen somebody else inside somebody else's face.
Oh, yeah.
I have. And there's something in there. What's got a hold of that person, I don't even know how to explain that, Steve, but I've seen it, and as well as I do too, Steve, that when something good walks in, something bad walks in, beforehand.
You tell. Sometimes, you get that feeling before you even see it or spot it, because I've known there was something around before, and you're like looking around trying to find where it's at or who it is or what it's in. And I've had that happen. I've seen children that were the cause of that. I've seen adults. There's been places where there were invisible things that were the cause of that feeling. But when you get that feeling, to listen to it and to not fool around with whatever that is, and at least keep your guard up.
Right. Absolutely true. And, it's a rough subject to talk about, ghost kids. I mean, everybody thinks it is creepy for sure. It's heartbreaking for sure. It's all the spectrum. It really is. And, tonight I wanted to do it a little bit of justice and say, okay, we're catching this on tape.
Yeah.
Don't think right away if you see something like that it might be somebody stuck, because that's why I had, brought up in the beginning that it could very well be like the little boy crawling in the window. It's just a happy time that they got.
No.
You really need a good investigation to figure out and unravel what I call, sometimes I always see it as a basket full of yarn that's got all tangled up, and you have to pick through and unravel it and untangle the whole facts and then figure out what it is and then handle it from that point on. But, when people tell me, oh, we've got, a little kid ghost that come and hangs out with us and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, there's plenty of stories about children playing with children. You have one of those, Steve. I know I do too.
Yeah, I've got a couple. There's one a girl that I went to school with. Our fathers worked together out at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and they had moved down from New York for him to take that job. She was actually born in Peru. Her dad was Peruvian, physicist, and her mom was, I don't remember what she was, from New York. But anyway, this girl was conceived in the Bermuda Triangle on a ship passage over. But anyway, when they got to Tennessee, she was about 5 or 6, and she'd gone down into the basement. There was a den down there. It's a fully finished basement. And she said there was a kid down there, a little boy. And he would tell her, shh, don't tell anybody. And she said she thought for the longest time that he was getting in through the window. There was no door in or out down there to the outside. And the only window, and she said she thought about it much later in life when she was older, that there was no way a kid that big could have gotten through that window. It was actually on the outside of the house near the ground. So it would have been about a 7-foot drop down into the room. And she said it was maybe 1.5 feet square. It wasn't big enough for her. The kid was a teenager. But he never bothered her or anything, but she would always encounter him when she went in the basement. She said I could go down there day or night and turn on the light, and sometimes he would be like right around the corner. There was a laundry room down there, or he would be sitting on the couch in the den. But nobody ever saw him. She talked to her parents and her younger sister about it, and they're like, you're crazy. But she said he was as real as you are, talking to me. And said, this, don't know what that was about, but he didn't want her to know. Obviously somebody that had lived there before or had some connection. She said he was wearing fairly modern clothes for that time. This would have been in the early 60s. So who knows?
Who knows?
And then the other times, and I had this happen several times, where we lived, we had 28 acres out in the country. Only about 5 of that was cleared off. We had 7 natural springs that flowed out of hillsides into a bigger branch, and then that all ran into the lake, which was about 100 yards or so away. Well, I would go down into what we called the bottoms, which was across the branch from where the rest of the house and the road and everything was. I would go down on the bottoms and play sometimes. We had our garden down there, so it was just nothing but plowed ground, and we'd have campfires and stuff down there at night, bonfires sometimes in the fall. And there were these kids that would come. I would hear them coming down out of the woods. And it's weird because I would hear other stuff in the woods. There had stuff chase me out of the woods. But in this area, I would hear people run in the leaves. I look up, and here come these 2 little boys. They were obviously brothers. They looked alike. One was older than the other. I'd say the oldest was probably 8 to 10. And the little one was probably 5 or 6. And they would come and play, just run around down there. And we'd play guns, with sticks and things, shooting at stuff that we couldn't see, like cowboys and Indians type thing. But they never talked. And I thought, well, maybe they just, they don't have anything to say. Maybe they're mute. Maybe they can't talk. Maybe they're deaf. I don't know. But then I found out, well, no, they're not deaf, because I would hear a bell ring, like a dinner bell.
Wow.
I mean, loud, like bong,
Right.
bong, bong. And they would just drop whatever they were doing, take off back through
And
the
go.
woods. And I'd see them, I don't know how many times I played with them over the years. We lived there for 15 years at that particular house. A handful of times, I'll say half a dozen. And then years later, I was in my 30s, and we were talking about that property down there. My dad was wishing that we still had it, still owned all that. And I said, well, when I used to go down there and play in the bottoms across the branch there, who were those kids that used to come down out of the woods? And he's like, your imaginary friends? And I'm like, no, no, no. And I described where they were coming from, what area. I even pulled it up on like Google Maps and showed him. And he's like, see, there's nothing over there. He said, the only thing over that little hill that's a straight, almost a straight drop off down into the lake. And he said, there used to be a church and a cemetery over there. But when TVA backed the Clinch River up and made Melton Hill Lake, all that's underwater now. They didn't relocate it, they just flooded it. And I thought about that. Those little kids, no, Aunt Edna, they never said a word to me. But they were wearing like blue jeans and
Wow.
flannel shirts. And as was the style back in the 50s, they had the cuffs on those jeans rolled way up. A lot of, especially
Yep.
farm kids, you'd buy a pair of jeans that were way too long. Your mom would put like a 4 or 5 inch cuff on there.
Yup, big wide
And,
one.
and then every year they'd roll it down a little bit
That's
so
true.
you could wear those pants for several years, kind of grow into them.
Yep.
But their clothes always looked clean and new, like they had just bought them and put them on. I think it's
Wow.
probably what they were buried in. But all that
Oh,
didn't occur to me until said I was in my 30s that nobody else
Wow.
could see them, or that. But and then when I was trying to show my dad on the map where it happened, I could see it's just like there's a topo map, and there's like, boom, that's the lake there. There's nowhere where
They
they
coulda
ran up
gone.
the hill. The only way to go was over and into the water.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I don't have anything like that. I have little Katie, who I can still see her. She had like a little flannel shirt on. It was the little red and white checks, not the big ones, but the tiny little red and white checks. And she had like a frayed collar and overalls, jeans overalls, and red pigtails. And she would come and she would talk to me at like my toughest times, and I'd go outside and play with her. And sometimes I'd ask, like I'd always get a sandwich. My mom would cut it in half, and I'd, tell her, can you cut it in 4 pieces? And one day, I said, and cut the crust off because that's the way Katie likes it. And she goes, when am I going to meet Katie? Little things like that, And I can remember seeing her sitting there eating a sandwich, just like it was, until my mom started to realize that it was gingham. That's it, Roseworthy. Thank you. Until she started to realize, I think she let it go for a while and thought it was just an imaginary friend. And then she started to get worried about it. And then we were moving again. So every time you moved, you'd have a fresh start. So I remember being in the car and leaving, and I said I never got a chance to say goodbye to Katie. And my mom, just the way she looked at me and said, Katie has to stay here. She cannot come with us. Put like an exclamation point on everything that happened, because that was it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's it. You didn't talk about it anymore. And I always suspected that my mom had abilities as well. I think my whole family did. But I think that went with the Native American, keeping everything down on the down low. We didn't want to let people know who they were. Of course, my great-grandmother and my grandmother, because of things that were going on in those times, 1890, when she was born. You didn't admit you were Native American. You sure as hell didn't admit you had abilities, unless you were one of these people that were coming up into the spiritual movement and were known as mediums, and then everything was more of a hush-hush, wasn't it, Steve? I mean,
Yeah,
it was
exactly that
yeah.
way. Just some things you didn't talk about, just for fear of ridicule or
Right.
for bringing shame on you or your family. And I mean, we had people like that. There were people in the neighborhood that had been known. There was one old lady that told fortunes, and it's funny because my grandmother had done the same thing, but everybody liked and accepted her. But this old lady, they didn't like her. She had a darkness about her. They claimed that there were days when her husband was so sick he couldn't even get out of bed because of some kind of spell she had put on him. And then by the evening, he'd be down to the river fishing. So it's just a matter of acceptance. But she worked evil. She did
Right.
curses and cast bad spells and things.
Right.
Where my grandmother just told fortunes and did love charms, good luck charms and superstitions, and tell girls how to catch a fella and things like that.
Well, a lot of that stuff too, though, Steve. I mean, one of the things was brought up to me a lot back in the day was always get the honey jar. You did get the honey jar, and you put in the honey, you'd write the name of the person that you wanted to fall in love with you. You put it at the bottom of the mason jar, again, more mason jars. A lot of things happen in mason jars. And that is so good. I'm here to tell you. So then you'd put it under your bed, and then you'd think of that person before you went to sleep. You know, this kind of thing would go on. But, you know, a lot of times, Steve, like a lot of those spells, or like the genie with the 3 wishes, or the djinn, or any of those things, a lot of times it doesn't turn out the way you think.
Comes with a price. Yeah,
it always comes with a price.
Grandmother used to tell the story of a thing you could do with a mirror, and I don't remember the specifics of it, but you had to go out by a creek at midnight, have the water at your back, and there's something you had to say 3 times about send my love to me or something like that. It was almost like a little poem. And then you looked in the mirror, and supposedly on the other side of the water, you would see the face of the person you were going to marry. Well, she talked about one girl that did it, and when she said the little poem and then looked in the mirror, she saw a coffin on the other side of the creek, and she passed away not long after that.
Oh, my goodness.
So some of that stuff comes with the price. You don't always want to know what's in your future.
Absolutely
Sometimes
true.
it's better just to let the future happen.
My goodness, I'm telling you what, there's so much in this chat that's just, you know, just wonderful. We have a great chat, and they really are aware of a lot of things and learning and telling each other stuff, so I'm peeling together. Casey says here, Courtney said her mom would always say, don't call the beast about anything paranormal. You know, that has a lot of root of wisdom to it, because, you know, Steve and I both grew up with things, don't talk about it, you know. How about you, Steve, yeah?
Yeah, especially my dad's family, they were Cherokee. My dad's grandmother was full, his mother was a half, so he's a quarter, I'm an eighth. But yeah, his mother would skin your head. He was the way he put it for talking about certain stuff. She'd just be like, "You don't talk about that. So do you want it to come here? Do you want to go out and find it on the porch? Do you want it to knock at the door? Don't talk about it." And he said they get in trouble for some of that stuff. That there's things that just by mentioning its name or even thinking about it, you could draw it to you. And she was, you know, very well made herself known how she felt about stuff like that. But then she practiced other things. She did, like, technically today what would be called herb magic or mountain medicine.
Us too.
And things. So she had beliefs and stuff of the good side of it, but the entities and the evil stuff, she would give you a very stern warning about messing with anything like that.
Anything, you got to cover yourself. You got to know what you're dealing with. And, you know, we have people come out and go and come back. Sue, welcome back. Sue Broden, welcome back. Courtney's laying down a lot of wisdom here. Black Dragon, Andrew, everybody in here has just such insight and wonderment still to it. You know, each one of us has a specialty. Each one of us has an understanding or something that we're interested in. And then it all comes in here together, and we all learn from each other, because we certainly don't know everything. We never do. I mean, Steve and I have been in this, combined almost 100 years together.
Probably over 100 years.
Not actually sitting here talking to each other for 100 years, but we could probably do it. You know, we could probably do it. But, you know, that's the thing. So, you know, tonight was, you know, it was kind of touchy. I thought about, you know, not doing it because I know it's close to a lot to a people's hearts.
I'm glad you did. We had a good talk. Got a lot of stuff out there. And the feedback from the chat's just amazing. That's what I love when you start talking about stuff like this. And people are like, yeah, something similar happened to me, or this happened to my mother, or, you know, that's great. That's how you find out about things like this and share.
It absolutely
when Cisco and I were growing up, you didn't have this ability to sit and talk to people like this. I mean, they put you in a rubber room somewhere, or send you to a head shrinker, or something if you talk too much of this kind of stuff. But now think about it, Steve.
How many people in the loony bin? How many people have been told they're schizophrenic? Now maybe they are, but you know, I've met at least 3 in my lifetime that were told they were schizophrenic, you know, and had all the drugs and everything. And the person that they said was sitting there, I saw him too. Yeah. So what's that? Mass hallucination? You know, a lot of people in here are talking about having abilities and being shunned because they embraced who they really were. Don't let anybody put your light out.
And you think about it, there was a time when a girl could be sent to the lunatic asylum for wanting to date a boy from the wrong family.
Right.
There was no
Or burn at the stake for healing the governor's child one week, and the next week somebody said that they were a
Yeah.
witch.
Or same. Look at Joan of Arc. I mean, she was thought to be a witch.
It's
She
absolutely
heard
insane.
voices.
You know,
So
the only way
times
you're
have
gonna
changed.
and the only way you're gonna get that out is to do this, is to talk about it, and everybody ask questions, and then ask other questions, and help each other through, because there's a lot of people in here with abilities. No, you know, a lot of people don't know what to do with them. Maybe in this stage in your life you found a happy place, you're a tarot card reader, or maybe you do other stuff, or maybe you started a podcast, or you know, your paranormal group or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's great, you know. And Black Dragon, I want to know where you were last week when we were eating caramel bacon popcorn. I came up with a whole recipe because all he does is talk about bacon, which is fine. So I did the bacon caramel popcorn. You've got to go back in, I guess it was last Monday Madness, and look at that. We did ghostly movies and stuff. And we sent Steve lots of healing energy, and you got your computer up by at least midnight, didn't you? So
Yeah,
I think it was
some
because of this
semblance
chat.
one going, and then here I've got everything back. Got a new camera set up today in this new
Wonderful.
Windows system. Just got to get my
Bacon
Mac
is
side
life.
up and running. Black Dragon, he or she,
Yeah.
because I was called a devil worshiper. I went through that back in the 80s during the Satanic Panic. I listened to a lot of metal music. I wore all black. I looked the part, but I wasn't a devil worshiper. But
No.
I was called that, and
Yeah.
it's funny how times change, how attitudes change and stuff. And I had a group. It was a parapsychology, paranormal type study group, and we go out and look for ghosts and things. And that I had people call me. You know, you go to the graveyard, you're a damn devil worshiper.
Yeah.
And I
People
was
don't understand.
talking about back then. This is before the internet, and you had BBS systems where you could call into somebody else's computer and post things. Well, there was actually a network. It was mainly UFOs and stuff, but they had paranormal stuff in there too. I think it was called Paranet, and it was several different BBS systems tied together. And I was talking about it. They'd interviewed me for the local paper, and I said I wanted to get a modem for my computer. I didn't even have a modem at that time for my main system, as I'd use the modem at work. But I wanted to get a modem for home so I could tie into the Paranet and put my reports about these haunted graveyards and stuff online. And I literally had somebody come up to me in the grocery store. It's like, you're so stupid. You're going to take a laptop out in the graveyard and try to talk to ghosts. And I'm like, dude, you're so far out. You have no idea. And see, my brother was a preacher. And he's like, that's going to look good on you, brother. And I'm like, my brother don't give a, you know what? He wasn't judgmental like that.
I mean, that's just the way it is, you know.
But that's literally, they thought I was taking a computer out in the graveyard to talk to ghosts. You know, hey, that might not be a bad idea. Maybe I should try that.
You know, James Wyrick, we had him on with Dave Haney not too long ago from KSPS, and when we were at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, he had called and talked to me privately about this several times, because he says, you're not going to believe what what happened to me. And he always opens up the story was, I had the most unbelievable 30 minutes alone with Natalie Wood that I can't even describe it. And of course everybody's just like, whoa, wait a minute, what? You know. But he went to California to what is that, Love Everlasting Cemetery or whatever in Hollywood, where they're all buried. Marilyn Monroe's there. So many stars, you know, are buried there. And he went and talked to several of them, and he did just that. He took a tape recorder and some other things, just ask questions and see, you know. And we had a long talk about whether I thought that they were there, stuck there and wandering around, or if they just came. And I believe, Steve, that it's easier for me to think of the fact that they're not stuck there. They came because, you know, he called them, and you know, that was something that they were attached to, and it was easy route for them to take. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just all kinds of Slow Motion said something there I wanted to comment on.
Go ahead.
He said, modem, did you chisel it out of stone yourself? Almost. The very first modem I had at home, it was an acoustic coupler. You would pick up the phone, dial the number of the computer you want to connect to, then put the handset in this thing. It had two receptacles on it, 110 baud. And then
Wow.
I upgraded. I mean, I could almost listen to 110 baud and read it like you could the Morse code. And then I moved up to 300 baud, and then I didn't get a 1200, but I got a 2400 baud modem, and I thought, wow, this is fast as it gets, And then Brian saying he remembered 14.4. Man, I dreamed of 14.4, and then
Wow.
when that came out, I had a 14.4, and then a 56K, and then after that, got all the way up into the late 20th century there, and got the it was like a cable. They called it a cable modem, and it was 64K per line, and you could baud those lines into one 128K line, so it was like twice as fast as the 50 whatever K modem. So it's like I've been there from the inception, man. I'm telling you, my first computer was actually a data terminal that had that acoustic coupler with it. It didn't even have a screen. It printed everything out on paper, like teletype paper.
Oh, like that, like a ticker tape, almost like, yeah, I remember those. I remember those. When we were in high school, it was the old, the great big beast, that had the blue screen with the ticker tape kind of writing on it and stuff like that. Amazing what we've seen.
We had two computers. We had a PDP-11 or PDP-10, one of those that had like the push buttons and stuff on it. And then the first actual computer was a Radio Shack TRS-80. There was one for the entire high school, and you had to, it was in a closet, and you had to schedule time to use it. I took a programming class, and I would schedule time during the day to go in there and program on the computer, and you saved your programs to cassette tape. So I've been around for a while.
Yeah,
but,
and I remember the first
punch
EVP.
Cards too.
The first EVP you got was on a reel-to-reel, wasn't it? Or was that?
Yeah,
okay, yeah. I mean, that's going back. I remember that because we had it in the band, the big old tape, the big old buttons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I know Michael Laciana said he got his first one off of something like that. I don't think it's his equipment, though. I think it's him. I think he could take
anything and get he has some of the most clear, startling, disturbing EVPs I've ever heard. Yeah. I think he could take anything in there and get those.
He is like that, man. I'll tell you, I got so lucky. I've got to spend some good time with the best people in a dark cellar. I mean, just you think you're out of your mind. So you want to go to a haunted house and go down and sit in a cold, dank cellar and, see what happens? Sure, let's go. Let's go. And I've got so lucky to be with people, and we always get something. We always, something always happens, and, multiple levels. And I do believe it's the intent of the people, too, I mean, the last time we went to, like it was just a couple weeks ago, there was 2 kids involved in that. There was little George, who was a child who was visiting back and forth. He just had him a path worn to this one person, and he would come in and try to help other ghosts cross. And then you had little Carla, who had been stuck for a long time, and I don't know who she followed in or whether little George helped her, come over or come out of the shadows or what to talk to us, but she trusted the people that were there. And I think it took all of maybe 20-25 minutes to get that little girl to walk into the light. She just needed to be shown a little love. And that's my message tonight too, to everybody out there. Just keep putting your light out there, keep putting your love out there. If you do see a child ghost, do some research. Don't just assume, because the thing that's happened with a couple of cases I've been involved in, and Andrew and other people here that have, I'm sure, all the different paranormal groups that we have represented here tonight can say the same thing. It takes a village sometimes. You can't just jump to conclusions. And, if I've got something by the side of my bed, we did have one, my ex-husband woke me up in the middle of the night and said there was a little girl standing by the bed. I was pregnant at the time, and he says, I think you're going to have a little girl. I think I saw our future daughter. Well, I didn't, and I didn't think it was that. I thought it was something completely different because I had been getting totally different feelings in there. But he saw her, and I didn't. She chose to come to him, and we weren't in that apartment very long, and I had, my second child, and, we moved, but I never got to investigate that. But just from the feeling of it, and again, I highly recommend go with your intuition. Don't talk yourself out of the miracles, but also don't talk yourself out of your intuition telling you that that's something you don't want to mess with, or that's something that's not what it's manifesting itself to be. And I think you can use that in life too, can't you, Steve?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm having a crowd over here. He's got something I don't know what it is. It's a dog bone. There you go.
Okay, it's okay. Mulder can have. Hi, Mulder. We had Mr. Dickens on here last night. Well, I have kept you a long time, Steve, and I promised the chat I was going to play part 2 of Cabin 22. Do you want to stay for that, or do you want to bow out? Because I know you probably
I'm
fall
gonna
asleep.
bow out. I've got to.
Okay. I know you got another show.
Call. Mulder's ready to go out too, and yeah, I got to get ready for my midnight show.
All right.
Now, I will listen in. I'll leave it playing on
Absolutely.
my phone. But thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate you coming by and joining Cisco and I tonight. And stay and listen to this if you can, because it's amazing, and it's based in reality, like in all the stuff we've talked tonight. Everything supernatural in this story, the entire thing comes from something that actually happened.
So true. Thank you so much for everything, Steve, and great stories as well. And give Mulder our love, and I can't wait for next Monday Madness. I don't know what it'll be, but it's going to be fantastic. They love you.
Whatever it is.
They're all saying goodnight, and they love you so much, and I love you. Know, dear heart, I love you. You're my brother.
You
You're absolutely my brother. So have a good night, darling, and I'm going to start this up. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Okay, chat, here we go. Now, this is part 2 of Cabin 22, The Strange Case of Cabin 22. Everybody remind me, we left off, let's see. We left off, and Rage and Dave were in Cabin 22. They were sitting on the couch, all 3 of them. Dave, Rage, and the 12 gauge. Correct? And they were starting to fall asleep, and neither one realized that there was a face in the window outside to his left. Okay? Because remember, he pulled the couch up, so now he can see really good. So there's this large, person or figure standing outside of this window while they're starting to go to sleep. And in the middle of the night. And in this one, you're going to meet quite a few characters. This next part is power-packed as far as people coming in and starting to meet. You meet the Steels, Greta and George. Fantastic little couple. You're going to love them. They're just somebody else staying in the cabins. You're going to meet Chuck Magee, Mrs. Magee's husband, the one that carves... who runs the place, basically, all the cabins and everything. And if you do have to leave now, just go ahead. You can listen to it. It's going to be, on the thing. I know you're still falling asleep, Laura. Well, you probably fall asleep, but we'll catch back up. And Laura has also volunteered to come in on the first half of part 6 and talk to us while we listen to it, to commentate on characters and stuff like that. And we're going to pick some other people too who want to do that and come on and guest host with me while we listen to part 6. Part 6 is 4 hours long. It's a long chapter. This one's a short one, and forgive me while I pull it up, because I can't tell the way these are which one is which, so if I have to pull it down, it's just because I got the wrong one, but I think this one's it. Pay attention to the videos. They got a little bit better, and they have some extra things for you.
The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 2. Dave was deep into the Chapter 2 of The Whistler. This really was turning out to be a good book, he thought, and he reached into the bag for a pork rind, almost made it halfway to his mouth, and thought he had lost count on the 2 for me and 1 for Rage's share. Sorry, boy. Here you go. He extended the snack toward his buddy and looked over the book towards Rage. He noticed a look he had seen before, and he slowly lowered the book and connected look to look with the dog. He gave a quick chin-up motion to Rage, a signal they both knew as a "what's up?" He also almost mindlessly dropped the pork rind and slowly started to reach for the 12-gauge lying to his right along the back of the couch. Rage was slowly gesturing with his eyes to behind Dave, back at Dave, then behind him to Dave's right again. Dave understood. Slowly he held up his left hand, palm out, to a hold position, and Rage did just that. The dog went into full on-duty mode, and locked his eyes on whatever he saw behind Dave. Dave reached the shotgun and in one moment rolled off the couch onto his knees and had the 12-gauge pointed at the same direction. Rage followed suit and took his position by his friend's side, paused forward and locked in. "Go, boy," he whispered, and Rage took off, full tilt boogie toward the large picture window. Silent but deadly, Dave caught a glimpse of a large, dark figure pulling away from the glass and back off onto the porch. "Let him have it, Rage." The dog burst into a barking, growling warning that probably meant, "That's right, you son of a bitch, run!" Dave went to the door, opened it with one hand, and the 12-gauge pointed, and kicked the screen door. It banged against the back of the cabin, and Rage ran out barking and sniffing at the window, followed the scent down the porch floor, and directly to the railing on the back end of the porch. Dave followed the direction of his partner with the weapon, slowly moved toward the railing Rage was inhaling, and stared into the nothingness. "My God," he thought, covering his left and right, down and then back again, with his gaze and the business end of the 12-gauge. "Where'd he go, boy?" Rage was silent and acting like he lost the scent. His head poked through the railing and looked down. Dave stopped for a second and listened. No anything. No rustle of leaves. No sounds of any kind, except an owl off in the distance. Dave looked down as far as the moonlight would offer and saw nothing. Easing the weapon to his side, he pet his friend's head, and they both just stood there in silence a moment. He had seen something big, something dark in that window. He glanced back now, doing his best to calculate the size. It had filled in the better part of the center of that huge picture window, he thought, and almost clear to its top. 6'4", 6'5", maybe? And wide. But the drop-off this porch was pretty damn steep and loaded with nature's security alarm, dried leaves. He moved to the side and looked down. Even here, there was nowhere to silently climb up. "Hold, boy." And Rage sat. On duty for sure now. Dave quick went inside, grabbed up the mag light he had brought, and put it in his back pocket, and grabbed the large Coleman spotlight he had. He joined Rage, and together they watched the light as it illuminated the trees and surrounding area. Nothing, not a damn thing. Just the darn owl off in the distance again. What the hell? "Okay, boy, inside." They both went in, and Rage went back to the inside window, sniffing. Seemed like he was trying his best to figure out this too. "Stay here, boy. I got this next part. Gonna go look around." He in no way wanted Rage to run after this, whatever it was, and spend the night chasing after them both. He slowly walked around the perimeter of the little cabin outside. When he went as far as he could onto the porch, he quick turned on the light. He held with the aim of the gun, directed at what he could see under the balcony of the porch. Rocks, sticks, of course leaves, and 2 Pabst Blue Ribbon cans faded with time. Slobs, he thought. As he made his way back inside, Rage was seated just inside the screen door, and greeted him as if he had been gone a month. "Okay, boy, I know. And it made him smile. It always did. "I don't know what the hell is going on around here, Rage, but thanks for the heads up, buddy. Let's go lock her down and settle in. What do you say?" They made the rounds from window to window, door to door on the inside, checking all the locks. Satisfied, he laid the 12-gauge on the couch and pushed the couch against the far wall, moved a little table from the corner, and shoved the couch there. He sat down, put the weapon on his lap, and leaned back. Better now, his back to the wall. Front door to his left, kitchen, picture window, back door, left center, doorway to the bedrooms, right center, and a solid wall behind him. Good. Odd how that always made him feel better. And for a moment he remembered watching an old Western as a kid. Wild Bill Hickok always took the chair with his back to the wall, and Dave never forgot this. Always requesting the table with the best view of the entrance, and his back to a corner. Honestly, he didn't know why he hadn't moved the couch to start with. He hadn't been himself lately. He was indeed coming back, though. And he looked up at Rage, who hadn't really gone into vacation mode. And he was very grateful for that. Rage now sat, straight up, in all his shepherd beauty, tongue goofy hanging to one side. He caught Dave's eyes and attention, and Dave gave him the what's up chin. And Rage looked down, then back up at Dave. Dave noticed Rage was sitting in a whirlwind of spilt pork rinds on the floor, and Dave said, "Go ahead, buddy. They're all yours." Rage jumped up and happily ate every single one. Dave got a beer, picked up the Grisham novel that had skidded across the floor, and looked one more time out the window. What the hell is going on around here? And how many times have I said that? We haven't even been here a day. I just don't know what's going on. And then he turned back to Rage, who had his spot now on the couch. "You got that right, buddy. We could use some sleep." Jeb Perkins cut the lights off on his old Chevy pickup when he turned down the dirt road. He could drive this road blind, and if blind running drunk counted, he had. He'd take the next quarter mile by moonlight and memory, keeping prying eyes off him what he'd been up to. Only reason no one finds out what you up to is people don't get a chance to find out. Jeb's daddy used to tell him as a boy, and more than Jeb liked, his dead father's voice lived inside his head every day. "Only way 3 people can keep a secret is that 2 of them are dead. You hear me, boy?" These words were often echoed by a slap in the face, or Jeb getting knocked to the floor with his dad's size 13 work boot, and once, just for flavor and style, a punch to the gut that made Jeb sore enough to hide out in these caves for 2 days, coming out only to scrounge up some grub. "You don't let nobody in your business, and you sure as hell don't let nobody in mine." He remembered, as if it was yesterday, and was proud in his 47th year that he had kept his dad's secret, and he kept his too. He had told his friend Skeet that the old man was hard, and he was an old cuss, but he's just trying to steer him right in an even harder world. Jeb was sure Skeet had bought this bullshit. He wasn't so sure about himself. He reached the little hill and just cut the engine and let the old Chevy roll to her stop, and the darkness hugged them both. The canopy off the dirt road was thick here, the underbrush and briar better. Jeb stepped out the truck, stood a second, and took out a hand-rolled bugle cigarette. One of 5 he allowed himself a day. He took a deep drag in like it was more than just tobacco, and felt the low-grade contents grab at his throat. "Don't you wince, boy. Wincing is for sissy kids and losers. Which one are you?" He shook off his father's echoes from the past, pulled a camo net out of the back of the pickup, and covered the truck. When he finished, he grabbed the 2 burlap bags of Farmer Bartlett's best corn out of the back of the truck and disappeared into the thicket of the hidden trail. Rage was snoring, laying on Dave's leg, and Dave's leg was most assuredly asleep, and he wished he was too. He glanced at his watch, one of the few people who still wore one, and it was pushing 2 a.m. And he was no closer to sleep than he had been an hour ago. He tried reading his novel, but every 2 sentences he'd catch himself looking toward the window. He reached out to the small table and grabbed the transistor radio he had brought. No doubt there would be no signals out here, but it was worth a try. He had seen a 48 news tower on the side of the mountain on his way up. There was a large building and another sign proudly stating, "Home of Doppler Radar," with a smiling anchor, his sleeves rolled up like he was on the case for you. Dave chuckled and flicked on the radio.
Can't have me. Nope. Mr. Pop. Eat.
He turned the signal dial, and a man came through the speakers in mid-speech. "I say to you, the Lord don't want your money. The Lord don't want your promises. He wants your heart, your soul, and your devotion." This last part broke into drawn-out syllables. Devotion. Dave turned the channel as Rage opened one eye. "I know, boy. Me either," and smiled. Hank Williams was just finishing Your Cheatin' Heart, and Dave didn't stick around to see what was next. He wasn't used to country music yet, loved some of it, but you had to be in the mood. He turned the dial, hitting spots ranging from white noise to crossover broadcasts. He found a woman talking in a soft accent for just a moment. She laid her hand on a gun, tears streaming down her face. Wow, a play of some kind? Maybe. And the white noise took over. He did his best to dial it back in. Just then, over the white noise, a distinctively different voice came through. A southern male voice, low and guttural, and clear, came over the white noise. "They killed me. Give it back. Why? Why?" Dave was startled at this and stared at the small radio like a face would appear on its surface. None did. Rage lifted his head to look at Dave. He waited, tried tuning the dial again. It must be part of the play. Neither he nor Rage believed that, and Dave turned it off. He laid his head back to ponder all that had happened in this little cabin in such a short amount of time they had been there. He drifted off to sleep, thinking over the day's events. one sack on his back, one dragging slightly to his left, a penlight in his mouth. Jeb struggled forward. The cave entrance was tight here, but he knew a few more feet and it would open wider, and he could stretch the ache in his back. There were other entrances to tunnels in here, too. Back when he was a boy, he could fit in some of them, and ran in them all day long, hiding things here and there, little treasures he had collected no one knew about. Caves were his, the tunnels were his, and it opened up to him like a wondrous world. One, when he was younger, was so tight he'd had to crawl on his belly like a snake. Oh, but it was worth it, 'cause it opened into a huge spot, even had a bit of a natural lake in there. Bats and other animals would gather there, and that was okay. It was all his then, and that tunnel had a break in it that ran clear through the other side of this mountain and came out behind some wild muscadine bushes, all hidden like by what was now called that dead children's playground off by the RV park and the garage he worked at. That place made him shudder, and he did so now. These tunnels were like a friend to Jeb, and he knew them well. He came to a turn, and he could stand up now. Off in the distance he could see a light shining dimly from his destination. He could also hear Elvis echoing slightly from ahead. "Damn, Skeet," he said angrily. "I told him to keep that racket down." And he pressed on. He emerged to find Skeet sitting on the old green couch he had made with orange crates and stolen lawn chair cushions. The colors of the flowers now faded, but odd in such a dank and dismal cave. Skeet was loading what he called his Widowmaker, a steel slingshot he had made down at the garage, and he had a bag of what Jeb was sure was steel ball bearings in front of him, sitting on an overturned crate covered with a rusty sheet metal. "Well, hey there, boy, thought you'd never make it up here tonight," he greeted Jeb, and Jeb dropped the 2 bags of corn in a steel drum and banged the lid on with a mallet that had sat by its side. "Skeet, I done told you to keep that noise down," and nodded toward the transistor radio. "But that's Elvis, man. You can't turn down Elvis." "Damn it, Skeet, you'll bring the law down on us for sure. Now turn it down." "Sure, you old worrywart. Ain't no one finding us up in here. Why, I'm betting no one but us and your old daddy been in here for 100 years and more." Skeet pulled the steel ball back, closed one eye, and let go. Whomp! The ball bearing flew through the air and made a direct hit into the head of a huge rat scurrying across the top of the steel shelves they had built about 10 years back. It hit so hard, it threw the rat up and back and hit a poster of the centerfold of Dorothy Stratton, duct taped to the plywood wall behind the shelves. Splat! The rat's blood sprayed all over Dorothy's smiling face and slid down the poster, leaving a trail, and hit the floor. "Skeet, oh God, not Dorothy!" Jeb ran up, pulled the sleeve of his flannel over his hand, and wiped the blood off Dorothy's face, making it worse, also making him think of how this beauty had died at the hands of her crazy husband. "I'm sorry, Jeb. I told you I'd take care of these rats. There's so many. Traps ain't doing the job. I'm getting right good. Look at there." Jeb looked where he had pointed, and a pile of rats lay in a twisted nest of blood, guts, and gore. "Jesus, man!" Jeb took off his old greasy ball cap and wiped his forehead. "Be careful with that thing, will you? And get those rats out of here when you leave, and be more mindful of my girls, will you?" Jeb was proud of his collection of centerfolds. They covered the makeshift walls within the cave, from top to bottom. He had Pamela Anderson next to his dad's old Betty Page, and Anna Nicole next to a Farrah Fawcett he'd liked as much as his old daddy did. Shannon and Kelly and Kim Kardashian glorified the walls behind his daddy's still, and swayed sometimes when the mash got hot and steamed. Drew Barrymore smiled at him from above the sugar barrels, with her little butterfly tattoo. Marilyn was everywhere, and those he had put behind plastic poster frames he had got special on a run into town with his dad and Uncle Dean before he died, when he was just a boy. The room was covered in his girls, and stacks of old Wee and Hustler Playboys filled the room and shelves, along with the cases of mason jars and steel barrels of sugar and cracked corn and large water jugs among their beauty. It was his daddy's collection, and he had kept it a-going, as well as the family's business of being shiners. Bringing Skeet into this was not something he was comfortable with, but he needed the help. "You checked those car batteries up the tunnel like I told you?" I did. Changed all 3 out. Hooked up the charged ones like you said." A makeshift exhaust system lined the far-off tunnel, heading away from the entrance. Small box fans and car batteries carried the smoke off and away to another exit on the far side of this cave. It worked fine to keep things flowing and the smoke out, but it still got damn hot in here when things got a-brewing. "I brought in the sugar, too. It's there in the drum." And Skeet nodded toward the stash. "She yielding good?" Jeb reached down and picked up a mason jar filled with his dad's recipe, shook it and held it up, and watched the beads form on its top. "Hell yes, just like she should," he smiled. "I got to get this out to our buyer tomorrow. Truck all packed?" "Packed and ready. Just the last few cases to go." "Truck's out in a spot, covered up like you taught me." "All righty then. I'm counting on you. Payday's Friday, and this'll be a good one." Jeb set the jar back down in its wooden case and checked the still. It was a mix of the original his dad built and parts he had to fix himself. Welding was a favorite part of being a mechanic down at the garage, and he was good at it. He ran a finger down the copper tubing and thought about the years this old girl had fed him and his family. All of them gone now. "Just me and you left, Sally," his dad's name for the still. Out of all his girls, she was his favorite of all. "Okay, Skeet, you get those rats out of here. Keep your eye on Sally, and I'll be back in the morning. Before I open that garage, I gotta go finish that John Deere for Hampton, and he's gonna give us a cut on the corn for the next batch." Skeet leaned in and took a shot at another intruder. Whomp! This one sprayed blood on Jeb's jeans and landed on the jars of the shine. "Jesus, Skeet, you gotta clean that up now." He swatted at the rat blood on his leg with his shirt sleeve again and grimaced. "Get those traps running, will you?" "Sorry, Jeb." Skeet grabbed up some rags and started toward the jars. "And don't you dare drink no shine tonight. I need you watching Sally." "Okay, Jeb," Skeet said as he wiped down the jars. "I'm all over it, and you can count on me. You know that, Jeb. You can count on me." All right, then. Skeet grabbed an empty crate and he started to pick up the rats by the tail and put them in it. "I'll be back in a couple of hours." Jeez, that's gross. "And, well, have a couple of days off when we get this finished, okay?" Skeet smiled up at Jeb, holding the rat by the tail. Blood dripped from its mouth, and Jeb shuddered, pulled the penlight from his pocket, and ducked off into the tunnel and toward fresh air. Skeet dropped the rat into the crate, wiped his hands on his jeans legs, and sat down on the couch, reached down under the metal sheet table top, and pulled out a jar, unscrewed the lid, turned up the radio, and drank to Travis. Call someone who cares. Jeb uncovered his truck and eased up the road, not turning on his lights till he reached the road away from the cave. He felt a little off, a little skittish maybe, but he had a job to do at the garage, and he shook off the feeling and lit up another bugler. Halfway to the garage, he felt he needed to drain the snake, as he called it, and pulled over, got out, and walked off to the wood line, unzipped his jeans, and marveled at the relief he felt with this simple task. He watched hot piss run down the bush in front of him when he heard a growl. He froze in his place, and it came again from in front of him and within the thickness of the trees. A low, rumbling growl now, and Jeb looked toward it, squinting to see in the shadows. A bear? What, a wolf, maybe? He hadn't seen one ever out here, but he had heard tell. Just then he saw the shape of what looked like a large dog in the thicket. He swore he could see the glare of its teeth and a glint of an eye. He was frozen as he looked at the shape in the shadows. He was frozen right to the spot. "Jesus, that's huge," he whispered, and the form moved closer. The snapping of sticks echoed its entrance into Jeb's space. And then it stood up. It was a dog, but not a dog, a wolf face, but stood like a man. Jeb's hypnotic trance broke when it opened its mouth in a snarl that made his blood run cold, and Jeb broke into a backwards run, almost fell, and banged into the passenger side of his truck. Quick opened the door, leaped in, and slid over, threw it into drive, and took off as this thing from the woods grazed its hand across the door, leaving a screeching sound of nails and metal. Jeb, sweating and hauling ass, looked at the side view mirror to see a massive abomination of man and beast leap back onto the cover of the wood in 2 big leaps. He had also pissed himself. As Dave and Rage finally slept, a few cabins down, George awoke to his wife Greta next to him, thrashing around as if in mid-nightmare. She was talking in her sleep, and it was sounding like nonsense to him, but he had learned to listen to her when she did this. They had been married 35 years, and Greta often had prophetic dreams, sometimes even telling him of things to come, warnings and such. Once she told him where he had packed the life insurance papers, and they were there, right where she said in her sleep, and Greta had not been anywhere near his office when he packed it up and retired. But there they were. The next day, Greta had no memory of ever saying a thing. George sat up on one elbow and leaned in, trying hard to hear what she was saying now. Greta spoke with a whisper. "Roo-ga-roo, roo-ga-roo." have been listening to The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 2. Stay tuned to find out what happens in the cabin village atop this beautiful mountain. Will Dave and Rage encounter more ghostly going on in the cabin marked 22? What was that scared Jeb so much? What was Greta saying in her sleep? Was this just gibberish or a harbinger of danger to come? Who else is on this mountain? Tune in for part 3 and let's find out together.
There we go. Sorry, thanks, Anna. I was saying thank you so much for listening and for getting it, just getting it. I mean, I know everybody in this chat gets the fact that Jeb's broken. His dad abused him and made him, you know. Can you hear me now? 5-5? Are we good? I think you should be able to hear me now. Are we good? I think so. Give me 5-5 or thumbs up if you can hear me. But Jeb was absolutely amazing, you know, in this, and he's scared to death. He's trying, thanks, and he's trying very hard to live up to his abusive father's memory, okay? And he's broken. You know, handle your business. Handle your business, you know, be a man. Don't wince when you smoke those Bueller cigarettes, you know, stand up straight. Really, these boys grew up on this mountain and, you know, stayed away. I mean, you go to the top of this mountain, you go to the base of the mountain, you get your stuff, go back up, you know. They're not big city boys. And this still is everything to Jeb. This is what his dad left him. Anything his dad left him means so much to him. The garage that he works at, that's about halfway down the mountain, right next to the Dead Children's Playground. The cabins are at the very top and on the ledge and all around, and then you've got all the trails that go back down and around. That's true. Skeet, we don't really know what Skeet's about yet. Most of the music in here on the radios and things like that are going to be foreshadowing. Songs all have something to do with either something that's going on right now, like here's a quarter, call somebody who cares. He's not going to listen to what Jeb told him to do. And what's the first thing he did? Picked up a big old thing of, you know, his dad's best moonshine and started drinking it when Jeb left and encountered whatever that was that scratched the side of his truck. And now he's, you know, hauling ass trying to get to the garage. Now, I've got another one if you want it. There's quite a few people in here. If you want the next part, I'll play it right now. If you want to wait till next Monday, we can do that too. So show of hands if anybody wants to stay for another bit. I don't know what you guys have going on in the morning. I don't know what time it is where you are. So I'm going to leave it up to you. If some of you want to stay and listen to the next part, we'll do it. I'm in. It's a jam-packed part because you meet a lot of people, and I'm here with you if you want to stay. I've got plenty of snacks, and I've got at least a half a thing more in my shine here. I will get up and get some. Okay. All right. Everybody wants to hear some more? Let's do it. Show hands. Okay. Let's do it. I mean, it's been a while since I've heard this. It's been like at least a year, but this next one coming up is so jam-packed. So listen carefully to everything. Remember what we're doing too. If I mention something and I screwed up, please let me know. And I'm writing them down, trying to pick out little things because this is going in print. This will be a book. And you guys are so kind. You really are. I love you so much. And I dreamed of this, that someday somebody was going to be able to listen to this and understand, you know, what was going on here, because these characters really have, I hope they have depth. I hope you can see them and understand why they you start to unpeel why they are like they are. Right now, Jeb's just somebody who's trying to get this moonshine done. He's got all these little deals going on. If I fix the tractor, he gets off on the corn and all this other stuff. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all enjoying it. Okay, so what do you say? Let's hit it. And let's see what happens next. It's a long one. If you have to go, I understand. But I'm going to stick with you on this. And the Canadian election. The world outside doesn't even exist for me right now. I'm just enjoying this so much. And seeing you guys enjoy it, it means the world to me. And these characters, I can't swear that they didn't help me write this. So I yield to them. And they had something to say. Again, look out for, thank you, darling. Thank you, Grey Wolf. I love you all so much. So this is it. You're going to start really peeling characters, going to start coming in now. And again, keep in mind, if I said something, he left the keys somewhere and I forgot and I messed up, let me know. Okay, babe? I really appreciate every single one of you and your thoughts on this. So here we go. Woo! What's this exciting? This is a good chapter coming up. And Little Crispy is along the way for the whole thing. Hear it, smell it, feel it, taste it, and see it. Really awesome. Oh gosh, Roseworthy. That's anybody's dream, to write down words and then to put voices to them. Don't ask me how I did it. I have no clue. They just came. So again, I yield to the characters. They tell the story, and now they're going to tell us some more. Here we go. The videos get a little better too. I was learning along the way, and I had to make each picture and stuff like that. So there's little mistakes here and there, but I gave it everything I had. Here we go. You're going to be we're going to take you some places, Patriot, I promise. And God bless you all for listening. Thank you so much. Here we go. Territories and treasures. And the sound does get better.
The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 3. George shook his wife awake. "Wake up, Greta. You are dreaming again." He shook his wife's arm gently, and she stirred awake. "Oh, my. Oh, my." She rubbed her eyes. Was I doing it again?" "Oh, yes," he told her. "It's all right, though. It's all right." Getting out of bed now, and he eased his feet into his worn slippers that were just getting right, and he wouldn't let Greta throw them out. What was it this time? Not another accident? I can't stop, was it? She sat up, worried now. No, don't worry. It was nonsense, he assured her, and she eased up a bit. In the past, her own words had scared her so, and she couldn't even remember saying them. Well, you'd think if I am to be burdened with this gift, I would remember something useful, like where I put the recipe for my mother's Srilaka, or where I lost her ring that time. Don't you worry, my rosebud. All things happen for a reason, and I love your Srilaka. He smiled, and she felt better, grabbing a robe from the foot of the bed and wrapping it around her. It was chilly in the room, and she looked out the window. It is still dark. Why are you getting dressed now? She teased. He struggled into his flannel shirt and reached for his corduroy pants. I am on the hunt for the Swanson's thrush today, he said proudly. Oh, how could I forget such a thing, she smiled. I hope this year it will be the one that you get to take the good pictures and you find him. And dress warm. Wear those boots I bought for you. Even though they pinch a little, they will help you on the slippery rocks. He smiled. It was their routine. She knew what he was doing. Just as he knew she would be making something lovely for him to eat when he came back to the cabin. Or have a crocheted scarf for him, or socks like last year when they stayed here. They came every year, sometimes in the spring and sometimes in late fall, and sometimes both. to catch migrations of birds rare to the area. This year it was the Swanson's thrush, and he would get pictures of the brown beauty and send them to the Audubon magazine with the other photos he got this season. Maybe this time he'd make the cover. I am going to go down to the showers, get a hot soak on my back to wake me up, and then off I go before the sunrise. The thrush loves the water and the morning mist. Well, I will be here. I have my new audiobook to keep me, and my wool work. You'd be careful out there in those woods. You call in on the hour, every hour, and don't make me wait. Ha ha. I will, he agreed. He had bought them, her really, a little walkie-talkie set so they could talk while he was on his adventures. It made her feel better, and, if he was being honest, him too. And if you are going this early, you'll bring some wood in and stoke the fire up, and I will make you a thermos of hot coffee and pack you some of my baklava to take with you. Thank you, Rosebud. I will get the fire before my shower now, and I will start the coffee. Looking out the window of the tiny cabin bedroom, she said to him as he grabbed up the clothes he had set out the night before with his little brown shaving bag, "The mist is thick this morning. You make sure you have your yellow light." "I do. It is in my kit with my camera and my gear, my love." Off they went to their separate duties. Fire stoked and coffee made, he carried a cup with him as he headed to the short walk to the showers. He loved his wife's coffee with just a pinch of cinnamon and eggshells to cut the bitter, she had said. And he loved the early morning, and he still had plenty of it in front of him. It was barely 4:30 a.m. Towel over his shoulder and his bags in his hand, he strolled past the other cabins and cut to the path that opened into the view of the manager's lodge. The shower stalls were located in what they called a longhouse, made of logs, of course. One longhouse for men on the right, and one for women on the other side of the general store. As he approached the lighted trail that led to the men's, he almost felt like he was approaching civilization again. The lodge was the only electric around, and it almost felt funny, even after a short time in the cabins. He could see lights on the manager's lodge from the window of the kitchen in the residence off the back end of the lodge, and knew Mrs. Magee would be making her sausage biscuits already. A very early riser. She always was, every year. And he would stop in and buy some for him and Greta to have before his adventure. His walkie-talkie was in his shaving case, and he knew hers was in her apron pocket by now. They never separated without them. He entered the shower's longhouse, and the lights came on with the door. Something new Chuck Magee had added this year. He placed his shave case on the last sink in the row and picked the shower stall in front of it. The tiles in there gleamed and smelled of pine. The Magees kept everything spotless here. Each stall opened up to an interchanging stall, with a lock on the green wooden doors, and a bench, and a place to hang your towel in each one. "Ha!" he said as he opened it and saw something else new this year. Large shower gel soap dispensers hung in the shower wall, and bright blue shower curtains hung between the changing stall and the shower itself. Last year they had been grayish blue and much older. Good for them, he thought. New lights, new shower curtains. Things must be going well for the Magees, and he smiled. He liked them both very much. He reached in and let the shower run on hot for a moment. He got undressed and thought, "Hottest water on the mountain," Chuck Magee often said, and he sure wasn't kidding. Dave woke with a start, still with the 12-gauge across his lap. Rage woke up too, and Dave could smell a hint of that smell again. Oh, no. He looked at Rage, who wasn't growling or staring at anything. But he felt uneasy just the same. "Morning, buddy," he said to Rage. "It is morning, isn't it?" He glanced at his watch, 4:25. That was just great. He figured that the 2 or so hours he had had was going to be it today. Coffee, he said to Rage as he got off the couch and stretched, walked over to the kitchen and took the stovetop coffee pot he had ordered off of Amazon and took it out of the box. It came in 4 pieces, with the directions in the top pot. He took them out and threw them into the empty box the beer came in that he was using for garbage. We got this, don't we, boy? Rage, laying on the floor, had his head on his paws looking up at Dave with nothing but confidence, and let out a yawn. Me too, boy. Dave dumped the coffee grounds into the top and filled the bottom with water, lit the gas stove with a match that was in a box on the counter, and said, "Let her rip." He took a can of Royal Canin out of the case, opened it with the pull tab, and looked around the kitchen, thought a moment, and grabbed a pot out of the bottom cabinet and plopped in the brown chunks. Looks good, boy. He placed it on the floor, and Rage jumped up, awake now, and Dave knew it would be gone before he got back from the bathroom. It was still dark, and he poked the fire as he walked by, making a mental note to get more wood out of the porch. He grabbed the Coleman lantern off the couch and made his way to the bathroom. He had to take a mighty piss, and the coffee would be a while anyway. The bath was small, a half bath, he recalled. A small sink and a toilet was all that was in there. What was that Mr. Magee called it? A commode, he recalled, and he set down the lantern spotlight so it beamed upwards and lit the small room in an eerie kind of way. He relieved himself and pulled the chain that hung from the tank that stood high above the bowl, and it flushed with a loud whoosh. Interesting, he thought. Commode. And he said it out loud with an understanding tone and a nod. He reached for the light and started out of the room, and the beam of the light caught a small mirror that hung over the sink. His face illuminated in the darkness of the small room. Dave could see what looked like black dirt on the glass. At closer inspection, it wasn't dirt at all, but a greasy-looking black goo that read, "Help me."
Jimmy! Yeah, come here.
Wait a minute, did you get her?
Yeah, I got her. Here she is. Jimmy, meet my sister.
All right. Yeah, she sure is, Minnie.
Don't you worry, sister. We'll get you a fella before the night's over, and then you can sing sweet love songs like Kitty Wells and Ray Chris.
Skeet sat on the couch listening now to a rerun of the old Grand Old Opry show playing over the radio. He was at least 2/3 of a jar into the best hooch this side of the Mississippi, and feeling all right. He was still stinging from the chastising he got from Jeb. Who did he think he was, anyhow? He said out loud to the cave and the dead occupants in the twisted mess on the floor. Sally answered back with a little whistle of steam. She purred along, dripping out the gold they had so depended on these days. He comes in here ordering me round, telling me off. All I'm doing is my job. He tossed a Cheez-It toward the pile of rats that had grown by 4 since Jeb had left. "You listening to me?" he said to the rat on the top of the pile. Skeet's ball bearing had ripped half his head off, and Skeet spoke to one eye. "He thinks he's smart, keeping things from me, like the secret to his daddy's hooch recipe. I'll find it out. I tell ye, I'll get him to talking one night when we're out night fishing. Get him all loosed up on hooch, talking about his daddy in the good old days, as he calls 'em. He tells me about 'em all the time. I hated that mean old coot. He's meaner than a snake." He tossed another Cheez-It at the rat, and it landed in the muck that used to be his head. Then, he pointed a nasty finger, still with old, dried rat blood on it, at the rat and emphasized his next words. I'll get those ingredients out of him, and I'll take care of him like I did that old Bob fool down at the lake. He thought he was smarter than me, too, till I cracked his skull open with that rock. He threw his head back, laughed again, pointed his finger at the rat with a grin that grew across his face. He looked just like you when I sunk him in the river. Put those rocks in his pocket to hold him down. The rat stared at him with a dead eye, and Skeet felt judged. I had to. He was going to tell on me. He found out I stole that money from his cabin. Wasn't much, $200. And that old pocket watch with the train on it. He reached down in his overalls and fished in there a bit and drew back his hand now, holding the gold pocket watch he'd spoke of. There was a train in full speed ahead motion, frozen in time on its surface, in raised etching. He ran his filthy fingers over it, feeling the cold gold finish. He pushed the little button on its top, and it popped open to a cream watch face with beautiful gold filigree hands and funny numbers on it that looked like letters. The watch played a little tune. Skeet closed his eyes as if taken away somewhere just a moment and listened. He opened them again, and inside the watch face it read, "To Robert eternally, your Susan." "Engraved, they call that," he said to the rat, who was still judging him with one eye. "In the grave is right." And he chuckled again. He snapped the pocket watch closed and stuffed it back in his pocket. He took another sip of the jar and talked to Farrah now, hanging on the wall. "You mark me. I'll get that damn ingredient, and your boy Jeb will wish he had treated me right." He heard a scratching behind him, and he turned and sat up all at once, spilling the rest of the contents of the jar down the front of him, and knocking the makeshift metal table over to boot. Ball bearings ran out of the bag, and then everywhere, as Skeet grabbed up the Widowmaker and a few of the bearings off the floor. With a keen eye on a drunken man, he loaded and aimed at what he called Big Buck. The biggest damn rat he had ever seen, he had told Jeb one day. "Damn thing is smart and it's messing with me. Won't take bait and always gets away. Pulling one trick or t'other, but I'm on it. You can count on me. You can count on me." The words echoed in his head, and he struggled to stand straight, the hooch running through his head with those words. And for a moment, it looked like 2 big bucks running across the case of jars on the shelf. "You just hold still, you son of a bitch." He swayed a bit, got his footing, and aimed true. Pulled back on the rubber sling and let her rip. Whomp! Shards of glass and Jeb's daddy's best shine sprayed the walls and Skeet. And Skeet stepped back to steady himself. Old Buck dove straight down and ran behind the still, avoiding the aftermath of Skeet's shot. "Damn it all to hell, you little bastard! You come back and take your medicine!" He stepped back and landed on the case of mason jars. His foot got tangled up in 'em. He jerked and kicked some out, and they broke on the floor. The room filled with the smell of shine, and Skeet was real hot now. He grabbed a hold of the huge barrel of the still to steady himself and burned his head. "Ow!" He yelled and jumped away. The rat skidded past him and ran behind a couch. "Gotcha now, you shit." Skeet moved forward to throw back the couch and finish off Big Buck. His boot landed in the pile of dead rats, and he slipped backwards, caught several of the ball bearings with his other foot, and that one moved through him back into the still. He caught a grip on the copper coils, and saved his fall. He landed on the 2x4s holding up the heart of that still. When he focused, the rat was now on top the sugar barrel and seemed to taunt him with gray eyes and whiskers that twitched its judgment. One ear had been chewed down or tore off by another rat long ago, and Big Buck wore it like a badge. "You little shit, look what you done did, and you're gonna pay. Now the rat just sat there in front of Drew and her little butterfly tattoo, egging him on, it seemed. "I got your buddies, and I'll get you too." He bent, picked up a ball bearing off the floor, and aimed at the rat. But it was gone. Just Drew, smiling at him. "Shut up, you bitch." Skeet saw a flit of gray just in time to catch Big Buck taking a turn down the tunnel, the one with the exhaust fans. "Shit!" Skeet kicked the jar in front of him, and it broke into the steel shelf leg and slowly seeped into the pile of magazines there. "Damn it, anyway." He thought a second, and he came up with what he felt was a brilliant plan. All right, I got you." He grabbed a box of Cheez-Its, and what was left he dumped on the floor at the entrance of the tunnel, turned the Coleman spotlight on and aimed it right at the pile, turned over a crate and kicked away the mess on the floor in front of the still. He sat down on the crate for the best view, grabbed a handful of ball bearings and sat 'em next to him on the boards under the still's tubing, and grabbed a jar that was rolling next to him, unscrewed it, and took a long sip. He wiped his mouth with a dirty sleeve and stared down into the darkness of that tunnel. "You're going to pay for this. I got all night. I'm going to get you. You can count on me. You can count on me." He reached over to the radio that had tumbled onto the floor and turned up the song and sang along with Garth. "I got friends in low places." Sally was singing too, except Skeet wasn't listening. She had got damaged in his run in with that old buck. Her pretty copper coils got pinched and poked, and she was whistling now, whistling a low, sad tune all her own. Dave took a closer look at the mirror. What was that? Is this a joke? He didn't think it was funny, and he didn't want to touch it, and reached over to the roll of tissue on the wall, unrolled a handful, and wiped at the E in me on the mirror, and looked at the black substance on the tissue paper. Black, slimy, and sure smelled bad, too. This was not at all funny, and he wondered what his welcome cabinet surprise and the guy at the window if this wasn't some sort of a prank. He rolled up the tissue, ripped off a large piece of the Kleenex box on the tiny table in the corner with its pine tree print on it, folded it over the tissue, and stuck it in his jeans pocket. He was going to talk to Mr. Magee today and get to the bottom of all this. He walked back to the living room to find Rage staring at the steam from the coffee pot and the coffee boiling out all over the stove. Oh, man! Dave wasn't having a good morning, but he made the best of it, cleaned up things, and pulled the soaked directions out of the box on the floor. He shook them off and poured a coffee into one of the provided cups and drank it, grounds and all. You gotta pee, Rage? Let's go. Out into the morning mist they went, and Rage went right back to his tree. The air smelled wonderful, and Dave sat in the rocker for a moment and took it all in. He saw lights through the trees and knew it had to be the lodge not far off at all. Hey, boy, what do you say we get a hot shower and one of those biscuits Miss Magee told us about? Bet they are early birds, too. He took a long sip of what had to pass for coffee right now and hoped Miss Magee had a better version brewing over there. Rage close in step with Dave, they walked a short distance to the showers. Rage not happy with the leash, but enjoying all the outside smells. Dave pretty much the same. He hated the leash, too. It was for the strange people, really. Rage didn't need it. He also was enjoying the outside smells. He made his way via the charming hand-painted signs to the shower longhouse, it was called. He could hear a shower. And possibly a man singing opera? Or very close to it. Coming from inside, and he pushed the door, and it got louder. Not too shabby, he thought. A long row of sinks stood off the wall like soldiers, gleaming in white. A matching row of large shower stalls stood on the other side, each with their own dressing stall. Nice, he thought. There was a brown shaving case sitting on the last sink in a row, and he remembered he hadn't seen one since his dad's when he was a kid, and he smiled. Steam rolled from the top of the last stall in front of the case, and the singing stopped. "Hello?" Dave called. Don't mind me. I'm Dave, just getting a shower. My dog is here with me, too, Rage." And Rage woofed, as if to introduce himself. "Hello there," came a voice from the steam. "Welcome aboard. I'm George. Water is good and hot." "Great," Dave smiled. "I could use it." George started a song again, lower, but just as happy, and Dave picked a shower, too, in from the first. Opened the door to the changing stall, tossed it his gym bag, and brought Rage in with him. Locked the door, and hung the loop of the leash on one of the hooks provided, and drew back the shower curtain. Nice, he thought, and turned on the hot water. Skeet stared at the pile of Cheez-Its, singing along with Johnny Cash's Hurt and staticky transistor radio, and rolling 5 ball bearings around in his hand. The other hand was busy swishing around the hooch in the jar, slopping it here and there as he emphasized his favorite parts of that song. His jet black, greasy hair hung in his eyes in clump strands. He hadn't seen old Buck for a while, but he'd be back, and Skeet would be ready. "Boy, you bet I will." Johnny's song began to go in and out with the static trying to take its place. And Skeet reached out with a filthy hand and turned the transistor radio toward him, only dropping 1 ball bearing in the process, and a sliver of a grin came across his face. "I still got it. I still got a steady hand. And don't you go out on me now," he spoke at the radio. The song came back to clear again, and he smiled fully and turned back to the pile of orange cracker bait. Swaying now to old Johnny, the radio into white noise static again. and then it started to screech a bit. Skeet set down the jar on the boards, holding up the still, dropped the bearings onto the floor, and grabbed up the radio, angry now, and smacked its back where the batteries are kept. Damn it now, that's Johnny you're messing with. He was warning the radio now. The radio went to silence, then started up the staticky wailing again. You think you're taking care of business, do you? A gruff voice, Skeet knew well, came from the dark tunnel of the cave behind the pile of crackers. What? Skeet, scared, froze and barely could speak. He looked in the direction the voice came from and picked up the Coleman and shined it all around the area. Nothing. Oh, come on now, man. Get your sheet together, man. Hold on. He coached himself along. You're just hearing things. That's that hooch talking. He tried to convince himself, and he laughed. The radio came back on clearly, and the volume rose to capacity, finishing Johnny Cash's song with a bang for sure. He shook his head a bit and pushed his hair back off his face and looked again down the dark tunnel. Nothing. He set the light beam back on the Cheez-Its and settled a bit, grabbed up a few ball bearings and tossed one down the tunnel. A metal click, click, click echoed and faded away as it bounced into the dark nothingness. He waited and heard nothing, and then the voice came again. I asked you a question, boy. Skeet stood up fast and sloppy at the same time, staring into the darkness of the tunnel. He knew this voice from long ago, yet not far enough in his past for him. Skater Davis, you're more worthless than that son of mine, that damn shocker that is. Skeet couldn't believe his ears. No. He's dead. I saw him put in the ground myself. Get yourself together, man. He whispered these comforts to himself. His insides felt like they went liquid. He stared into the darkness, not wanting to see what he heard. He heard one step, and then another, and a large figure formed in the shadows. Ezra Perkins took another step into the light and crushed the stack of Cheez-Its with one size 13 boot and ground the orange mess into crumbs. He smiled at Skeet, slow and long, with a toothpick in one side of his mouth. You think you're taking care of business, do you, boy? Skeet's knees failed him, and he hit the floor, and the world blacked out around him. Oh, man, this is what I needed, Dave thought. The hot water eased his muscles, and he stood one hand out onto the green tile wall and leaned in and just let the water cascade down his face. And his thoughts went over the last day's events, his ex, the lawyers, an 18-hour drive from New York to Huntsville. That last bit through Tennessee nearly killed him, he thought. Should have stopped along the way for more sleep than just the stolen hour or two back in Virginia in that Cracker Barrel parking lot. He's sure most of the events at the cabin and the black mist he saw was due to the lack of sleep. But rage, he had seen and heard those things too. He opened his eyes and drew back the curtain a bit and reached into his gym bag and rooted around for the shampoo he brought. Rage was sitting there and looking right at him. Nice to have a guard, he thought, and smiled. Few more minutes, boy. Almost done. Closing the curtain, he popped the top and poured more than he needed into his hand, and the mint and sandalwood scent filled the little space. Nice, he thought, and massaged the gel into his hair, listening to George finish his song and pick up another, and the sound of George's tap being shut off. The man's voice echoed off the tiles, and it sounded really good, he thought. He thought he heard the outside door open and close, but nothing else. just George singing in English this time. Are the stars out tonight? I don't know if it's cloudy or bright. Just then, something grabbed Dave's ankle and held on tight. He let out a surprised sound from deep inside and opened his eyes, not knowing what had just happened, and caught a glimpse of a large black thing retreating quickly back into the space between where the tiles ended and the green wood partition started. Rage started barking, and Dave jumped into the little dressing area Rage was in, darting one open eye back and forth at his feet and the open space around the shower. George yelled, "Dave, is all okay?" Rage was looking, too, in between barks, and Dave grabbed the loop of the leash, using one burning eye to see, and unhooked the latch to the wooden door, swung it open, and tried to look at the door to the bathhouse exit. It was just closing, and he caught a glimpse of something large and black in the last 4 inches of outside he saw. "David!" a voice from behind. Dave opened his eyes again, shampoo lather running down his face and neck. He blinked, and a man, medium-built, pot-bellied, and balding, with a hefty mustache, wearing nothing but a towel, stood in front of the last shower stall. "Are you okay? What happened?" Rage sat by Dave, gave a whisper of a growl, and Dave said, It's okay, Rage," as he wiped the lather out of his eyes. "Yes, I think. Did you see? I better go after her." He spoke all at once in broken sentences. "What?" George said as he approached. "Well, you must be Rage," he said to the dog, and Rage wagged his tail. "You'd better stay here," and gestured toward Dave's nakedness. Dave only realized then he was standing there naked. "Yes, please go and see if you see anything." And George did, as Dave grabbed a towel, wiped his eyes, and wrapped the towel around him. George opened the door and peered out. "What am I looking for, David?" "Something huge and black," Dave answered, using his flannel shirt to wipe his face and eyes. "I see nothing but darkness," George replied. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked as he came back. "Something grabbed my ankle from under the wall partition, and must have been in this stall." Dave kicked the door open to the first stall with a bare, wet foot and saw a black streak on his ankle as he did. George pointed. "Odd, that." And he saw it the same time Dave did. Dave sat down on the bench and lifted his foot, touched the black streak, and rubbed the substance in his fingertips. It felt greasy, and he smelled it. Motor oil? Grease? He had no idea, and he was questioning his own mind. "I don't know what is happening here, but I see your ankle is turning red. Is it motor grease, you said?" George questioned. I don't know," Dave said, "but it was something all right. Why would anyone do such a thing? But it was huge, the part I saw, and the hand or paw or whatever it was also huge. But I didn't get a good look either time." Rage sat between them, and George held his towel up with one hand and extended another out toward Dave. "Well, I am George. Pleased to meet you." Dave's eyes, still stinging, reached out and shook his hand and said, "I'm glad to meet you." "That's Rage, and I'm Dave." "Let me look again." George went to the outside door, opened it, and looked around, and then shut it. I don't see anything. Looks like the Magees are up, though. You should get that soap off. I have to shave, so I'll stay here while you finish. Keep an eye on things. We can get a good look around out there together." He nodded toward Rage. "Okay if I pet him?" George said, "Sure. That okay, Rage?" And it was, and George scratched his head. He saw it, too. "I heard him barking," George remarked. "Yup, he did. Darn leash probably kept him from reaching it, though. He can stay out here with you if that's okay. Nothing will get in. Just don't let him out, okay?" George smiled. Sure. We will have a song and a shave, won't we, boy?" "Go ahead, Rage." and off they trotted toward the far sink. Dave got back in the shower and thought about the black goo on the mirror. It wasn't the same, he thought. This one smells like motor oil, dirty motor oil, and the other one stunk to high heaven. He remembered he had the tissue wrapped in the cardboard in his jeans. And the men finished, and Dave felt better in his fresh clothes, and George told him of his adventure to getting a sighting of the thrush, and hopefully some good pictures, and told him about Greta's baklava, and about the trail to the good fishing spot off the Blue Trail, and he had suggested Dave take that one for good fishing. They left the shower building together and walked on up the manager's lodge. Dave's eyes were still burning, and he thought he could find it blindfolded if he needed, because he could smell those biscuits and coffee, too. George continued to call him David, and that was fine. Sounded right coming from this gentle character. George was neatly shaven and full of life, and joked about his need to call in to Greta. She feels better when I do. Yes, Rosebud, I will be back shortly, he finished with over. A crackling voice came back. Dave couldn't make out what it said. No, not too late to catch the morning mist. Getting some biscuits from the Magees. Need anything else? Over. The crackling. Careful. Over is all Dave caught. Will do. Over. George put the walkie in his vest pocket now, a brown hunter's vest with so many pockets Dave chuckled a bit. If you meet Greta today, I would ask you not to mention your incident just yet. David. She upsets easily, and Dave said no problem, and that he understood. They reached the door to the little general store, and George reached to open it. When we have a moment to talk, I will tell you a few things I have heard going on around here. Dave's sore eyes widened. Mr. Magee has a no-nonsense approach to the weirder things, and he won't take kindly to his guests being bothered on this campground, though. Let's get a cup of coffee, and I will tell you what I know. And Dave agreed. All three went inside the dimly lit store. Mrs. Magee did have coffee. Dave got a large cup, black, and 3 biscuits. Mrs. Magee put 3 of her homemade peanut butter dog biscuits in a brown bag and gave Rage another. They said nothing about the incident. Outside, they sat at a large picnic table on the side of the general store. George told Dave that there was talk here and there about seeing things like a black mist or a large black thing just off the trails. 2 days ago, he spoke with a woman while her 2 boys fished in the river off the Blue Trail. She had asked him if he had heard anything going on around here. George had told her he and his wife had been coming up here almost 8 years, sometimes twice a season. Nothing seemed to go on until this last spring. George leaned in toward Dave when he said that she told him she had to change her cabin, and that she and one of her boys saw something in the first one, something big and black. It had a bad odor, and it scared them very much. They had stayed in 22 like you, Dave. Dave was relieved and shocked at the same time. Dave told George that he had seen something, but he wasn't sure. Do you think it was the same you saw at the showers? Dave remembered the tissue, took it out of the cardboard, and showed it to George. Whew, that stinks, George winced, and folded it back up. It's not the same as today. That was dirty motor oil, if I had to guess. What is going on around here, George? I don't know, David, but my wife has taught me things I never thought I'd believe. Over the years, I have seen things, too. Things science and common knowledge can't explain away. Dave told him of the incidents in the cabin, the cabinets, and everything else, and feeling better now that George wouldn't think he was crazy. And he didn't. I can tell you this. Old Bob, that's what everyone called him, lived in that cabin over a year. They found him drowned in of a fishing accident, they said, down by the river. That's a huge lake off of the river off the Blue Trail, and he was there where that mouth opens and water gets rough on those rocks. But it just doesn't sound right to me. I got the story in pieces and been trying to put it together myself. There are a lot of repeat campers here, and yearly stayers down at the RV park. Word gets around. Magee is a decent, hard-working man and tries to keep a lid on it. He has a full house this week. All the cabins are booked. He does his best to keep it safe and peaceful. Word got out that the woods are haunted or something, and has been doing his best to hold back those paranormal groups from running around with cameras and such. Dave nodded. He just doesn't want to get a bad reputation up here in the cabins, but he's trying to do his best. You can't keep people out, though, if they want to get in. I think that's why the Magees have been so busy this season, able to add on extras this year. Just my thoughts, though. It makes sense. I can't tell you exactly what's been going on in my cabin, but I have my eye on it. Have you heard anyone else other than the lady with the 2 boys? Dave asked. Joan. A little. Still trying to fit the pieces together. I can tell you more this evening if you like. I usually come out here by the fire pit, enjoy a cigar with Chuck Magee. I can tell you again, though, he is a non-believer. Calls it nonsense. I truly think it scares him. So we can meet a touch earlier if you like. Magee doesn't usually come out till about 10 p.m. or so. That work? Dave said that it would be fine. 9 p.m. then. George told Dave he would be headed down the Orange Trail to get close to the little waterfall where the thrush may be. That there was everything the Swanson thrush loved. Best fishing is off the green, the yellow, and the blue trails. Follow the signs. They talked a bit about fishing, and Dave laughed about going around back and trying the worm machine. George said goodbye to Rage, who took to him right off, agreeing to meet again tonight. Dave gathered his 2 other biscuits and the bag of peanut butter treats for Rage. Went around to the worm machine, put in his quarters, and got a little box with, worms and dirt in it. Amazing, he thought. George called back to Dave. Dave, have you ever heard of anything called a rougarou? Dave thought for a moment and walked up to where George was. He had not. What is it again? A rougarou. Dave shook his head, but told George he had planned on going down to the mountain to grab some supplies, and he should have a signal there, and he would be happy to look it up on his phone for him. Technology, George laughed and waved a hand and a thank you as he cut off the dirt road toward the cabin and Greta. Dave walked on with Rage. Rougarou, Rage. You ever hear of that one? Rage just kept his eye on a squirrel who darted across the road, and Dave got his fishing stuff out of the truck, and they went back inside the cabin. Everything in its place. Dave checked the contents of the tackle box and sat down to finish eating and read the directions of the coffee pot. George set up his tripod for his camera. The waterfall was lovely. The mist was just starting to lift from the grass. Thistle and wild black-eyed Susans danced to the sounds of the earth waking up. Even the kudzu was pretty here. Calls his ears knew began to sing to him, cardinals, chickadees, ruby-crowned chicklets, and a mourning dove called to her mate, and the waterfall was their accompaniment. Binoculars around his neck, he set up his second tripod off to the direction of the downstream river. He had an overview here of several of the trails that widened around below him, The yellow trail marked every so often with the splotch of yellow paint on a tree, or an unassuming wood sign low to the ground marked the trails, blue to his right, snaked in and out, and clear around the side of the mountain. A long one for sure. There were 12 marked trails in all. He had walked them all over the years. Here was the best spot to wait for the thrush. Opened his little folding stool, took out the thermos of coffee and a piece of Greta's baklava, and sat down to wait and listen. Dawn was cracking, and the boys were thrilled to finally get to Old Blue today. They had finished. Joan smiled and was glad that things were picking up since they moved cabins. She packed her book, hoodies, and things for the boys and some snacks in her backpack. The boys were goofing on each other and grabbing their fishing gear. "Off we go, boys," she called after them. "I'll beat you," yelled Jacob to his big brother. "No, you won't either," Mike answered, and they sped past Joan like whirlwinds, and Joan laughed. "Wait for me now," and shut the door. George heard the familiar song he was waiting for and slowly lifted his binoculars and followed the sound. His excitement rose as he alternated from the binoculars to his eyes and then back again, zeroing in on that sound. There she was, the Swanson's thrush. He quickly let the binoculars quietly fall around his neck and lifted the camera that was there. Snap, snap. He took multiple shots. Eased his step back and used the camera on his tripod. Snap, snap. The thrush skipped over to another branch. The morning sun shone on its feathers. Another round from the camera around his neck. She flew off and landed on the branch with the little waterfall in the background. And George moved behind the tripod again, focused, and set off a series of good shots. The brown beauty flew up and over the stream, and George followed her with his binoculars so he could catch another shot. She was gone. But some movement caught his eye. A small boy, seeming to, track a rabbit, with the cunning and skill only a boy could have. He chuckled. He was on the trail down below, and George looked further up the trail and saw a woman with another boy. It was Joan, doing something with Mike's shoe. He slowly focused back to little Jacob, not far away from them, but enough to be scary, he thought. Out here, anyway, there's holes and rock slides. What was the boy doing now? The rabbit turned off the trail and went further into the thicket, and the boy followed. George focused in. The brush was very thick here, and he could only see flashes of the boy. And then the boy standing near rocks and lots of kudzu covering most of it. He was pulling on the vines and pulling back those green vines with the large leaves. Jacob reached in his back pocket and got a flashlight and pulled at the vines again, and they gave way, and the boy seemed to step into the small opening and just disappeared. "What in the hell?" George whispered. "That's not good at all. A hollow in the rock? A cave, maybe? Oh, no." He stood up on the rock near his camera tripod. "Hello!" he yelled, waving his hands. "Hello!" He focused on the woman with his binoculars and yelled again. Nothing. The waters from the falls, maybe, drowning out his calls. Oh, no, he thought. This is not good at all. He threw his cameras in his bag. He'd come back for the rest, his tripods and his stool. Threw his backpack on and made his way down the rocks that he had climbed up on. his pinching boots doing their job to help him ease down. Greta was right. The grip on these were good. He would hurry to warn Joan, but even at his best it would take longer than he wanted it to. Jeb woke up and his head just hurt. Oh, man. Not only because of the position he had fell asleep in, with his head on his desk in his office in the back of that old garage, but he had sat in his truck for a while after his run-in on the road last night, and he drank the contents of a flask that he had carried in his truck. It used to be his daddy's flask. Still had his initials on it, too. When he was done with that, he drank the moonshine he kept in his desk. The combo was wreaking havoc on his head right now. He was foggy, too, and he smelled like piss. How long had he been here trying to get this experience out of his head? Whew. It just wasn't possible that he saw what he thought he saw on that road. Just not possible at all. He was behind now, too. Hadn't done a stitch of work on that John Deere he had to finish. Oh, just wasn't possible. He thought again, shook his head. He rubbed his face and blinked and looked up toward the dirty window, and the sun streaked in through the dirty glass, and he knew he had slept through the night. Oh, man, I done it now. I gotta get that tractor done. He tried his best to stand up, and his head spun, and he sat back down. The front of his head was banging, and he was in bad shape. He opened the drawer to his right of his old beige metal desk. Just the sound of the metal slide on the drawer made him wince in pain. Stuck his hand inside of the drawer and felt around. Took hold of a jar of aspirin. Shook out about 10 of them into his hand and threw them in his mouth and chewed 'em up. He slowly got up and made his way to the old garage bathroom sink that was covered in greasy handprints and had a chip missing off one corner. And he pulled the string that turned on the light and winced at the brightness of it. He turned on the spigot and reached down and drank the water from the faucet, held his head back to swallow the aspirin, and then repeated it. Then he threw some water on his face and looked into the dirty mirror. As he stared at his reflection in the filthy glass, he heard his father's voice. "You sure are a mess, boy. You ain't taking care of business. You are worthless. That's what you want to be. Worthless. Go and handle your business." This last part tore through his head as if his father was standing right there, and he pinched his nose between his eyes to hold pain from running across his face. That's when he remembered Skeet still at the cave watching the still. "I double damn guarantee that old son bitch got drunk and didn't finish his job either." He quickly threw more water on his face, lifted off his old cap, brushed his hair back tight against his head, put the cap back on, and fast headed out of the back door to where he always parked his truck, round the back of the old garage. As he opened the door, the sun hurt his eyes, and he squinted and winced. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them and focused on his old green Chevy. Fumbled for the keys in his pants pocket. Yes, he thought, they were there, and made his way toward the truck, mumbling to himself about how Skeet better have finished those last 2 cases of hooch. He stopped in mid-stride, dead in his tracks, squinted again, then focused on the side of the pickup. There were 4 long claw mark scratches from the start of the passenger side door to above the back wheel well. They were deep and actually dented along each one with the force and power of the beast that was behind them. From the top mark to the 4th, the width measured as wide as the hubcaps on his tires. Jeb felt his chest get tight and his stomach started to whirl, and he bent over and threw up. Jacob knew he wasn't going to catch that rabbit. He knew. I'm not dumb like my brother and my mama think. Rabbits run fast, he thought. But just like that girl who was dumb in that book that Mom had read last year, he was going to see if this rabbit would show him something. Something, I don't know, secret? Jacob whispered this last word to himself like it was magic. He'd just quick see if this was something back here. A hideout, maybe? Treasure, like that other book with that pirate. You know, the one with the stick for a leg. The rabbit had led him this far. This was a secret cave. The door was hidden with that green vine stuff. But the rabbit, he knew it was here. So many stories he had remembered had caves, he thought. As he made his way behind the rabbit, it did seem to lead him. It took a quick turn at the entrance and followed a small, tight tunnel, and Jacob got down low and quickly followed with his light. Oh, Mom would be mad for sure. But if he found treasure, she'd forgive him, wouldn't she? On they went. Jacob saw an opening ahead, and the rabbit took off. Hey, wait for me, he whispered. Jacob put the little flashlight in his mouth and crawled forward after the fuzzy little guy with the secret hiding spot. Joan took the rock out of Mike's shoe and tied the laces in what she called a mama knot. Just a double knot, but she started calling that after Mike stuck his 6-year-old foot up with his old dirty Converse sneaker on it and asked for a mama knot, 'cause it kept coming loose, Mama. She laughed at the memory and tossed his hair, which he hated, and she tried to do that at least once a day, and said, "Stay close now. Those sinkholes are deep, you know." Mike looked over her shoulder. "Hey, Mama, where's Jacob?" Panic hit Joan in a tight squeeze in her chest, and she quickly turned around. "Jacob, Jacob, come out here now." She ran back up the trail a bit, retracing their steps, her head racing. Okay, he was just here. Mike started calling too. "Come on, you little goof. We're going to be late for the fish." Parent panic started to settle in fast on Joan's chest, and she was fast into full throttle mom. "Jacob, you come out here right now. This is not funny." Prayers, ideas, and help me gods all played in her mind at once, and she mindlessly grabbed Mike's arm as she backtracked her steps, keeping him close till she could see them both together and okay. "Jacob!" Rage was loving this adventure now, sans the collar and the long leash, running circles around Dave, up the trail and back down, sniffing everything. Dave walked with his tackle box in one hand and the pole over his shoulder, and that made him think of that old Andy Griffith show, and he just laughed. By the signs, they were a quarter mile into the blue trail. Fishing spot wasn't far off from what George told him earlier. It was a beautiful morning, and this is exactly what he had come up here for. Rage nosed at a butterfly, bright orange in the sun, that was sitting on a rock, and he wished he had brought a camera. Dave thought he heard a woman yelling, but the echo and the sounds of the outdoors distorted it. He stopped. There it was again. "Jacob?" he thought. Skeet woke with a start, heard the transistor playing a forgotten staticky tune. His head felt like a brick. Where am I anyway? He focused above him, squinted his eyes. The cave, he thought. Oh, man, my head. He pushed his feet to get up, and the room seemed to spin. He focused on sitting up instead. He held his head in his hands, palms to his eyes. Oh, this is a bad one. He ranked his hangover. No stranger to them. He looked up and around him, trying to remember. The place was a mess. He tried to push himself up again and grabbed onto the crate and sat on that, looking at the tossed-up couch and broken jars on the floor. Man, this is a mess. Slowly, the events started to come into focus. The damn rat! Ouch! This made his head split. He palmed his eyes again and felt like he was holding his face on. Just then, he remembered the dream he had had. Oh, that was no dream. That was a nightmare. He told himself, "You gotta get it together, man." He remembered Sally and turned himself around on the crate to check the drip jar. Scared, he'd let her run over. As he did, he looked toward the pile of Cheez-Its. They were crushed into dust. He heard a whistling in his head as his fear came back home, and he realized it was no dream. "That's right, shithead. I'm right here." Ezra stepped into the light of the Coleman still going on, smiled at Skeet, took out the toothpick, and pointed at the still. "Game over, you worthless shit!" Terrified, Skeet looked uncontrollably toward the still with his jaw hanging open, the whistle that was coming from Sally. His eyes opened wide in realization. Oh, You have been listening to The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 3. What just happened after the still blew up? Did Ezra's ghost come to try to stop the still from blowing? What is Jeb going to do now that he knows that he was attacked by something in the woods? What was that large wolf, man, dog thing? Tune in and find out. Part 4 of The Strange Case of Cabin 22.
Well, there you go. Boom! Game over, you son of a bitch. So there it is. Poor old Skeeter Davis, you know, I don't think he got his rat, and we don't know exactly what's happening there. We know that Ezra came back to tell everybody to handle their business, and they're not really doing it, are they? So he's a little mad. That still was everything he had, and he left it to his son along with the garage, and we know that story. There we are. Now, where is everybody? Everybody's kind of getting to that point where everybody's in the same spot. You've got George sees Jacob, little Jacob. I have no idea where that voice came from for little Jacob, but you are going to absolutely his little mind, the way it works, the way he chased that rabbit, because he thought the rabbit had a secret, a secret hidey space, a secret place that maybe he was going to lead him to treasure, like in that story with the girl who followed the white rabbit down the hole. We all know about that stuff, right? And Travis, part 4 will be next Monday after Monday Madness. We're listening to a part right up, and we're getting into usher us into Halloween together. So that's what we're doing. And part 4, there's 6 parts, and they get a little longer, and the videos get a little better. I'm sorry about my little mistakes in there with the pictures, but like I said, I got to make each one of those, and I got to make them move, and trying to fill in a long spot to make it visually beautiful. If you are watching, or you just listening, you can do either one. If you missed the prequel and part 1, that is on last Monday's Monday Madness, where we talked about ghostly movies who got it right. Okay, so you can go back there and you can catch up, and catch us back here next week. And if you wanna, go ahead, they're all on my YouTube channel. They're all right there. If you want to sneak ahead, some people here have already heard the story, and thank you, Patriot. Thank you for the pics. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of. I got to run those things through like 5 different apps, and then load them up and take them down and put them in your email, and then put them in the editor, and and all that other stuff. So it's really a labor of love. I wrote the story, and then to narrate it was kind of a weird thing, but at the time I didn't have any video or stuff. I just had on my podcast was all just audio, so that's why I did it that way. And then I decided to put it up here, and I put the videos with it. So thank you all for enjoying it. I'm, like I said, where is everybody? Rage and Dave are on the trail. They were headed for fishing, as he's on his 2-week vacation after his divorce from his wife. We never get to meet her, and all we know is that she went batshit crazy when she met the lawyer, and he had to get out of there. So he got him a new job in Huntsville. He is from New York, Albany. And he's learning all this fine, quaint stuff from the Southern charm, the way people speak, the way people help each other and help each other out. This community that are staying in the cabins and at the RV park. Some people are regulars, live there all year round at the RV park, just like in real life. And some people stay in the cabins for a whole season, and some leave when it comes winter time. And some people stay. There's about 35 cabins up there. So people come and go. We learned that, we know Miss Magee. She's probably the strength in the whole couple of Mr. and Mrs. Magee. We got May Magee and Chuck Magee. They own the land up there and all the cabins, and they stay, of course, year round. And we met George and Greta Steele, who I just love them. That couple is just amazing. The way they tease each other, like, what are you doing up so early? And, and like she doesn't know why he's there, just kid each other back and forth. They're really a tight, wonderful couple. And he's retired, and he does, he's in the Audubon Society, and he takes pictures, and he comes up there every year, sometimes more than once a year, and takes pictures, and he's trying so hard to get a good picture so it can be on the cover of the Audubon magazine. That's his whole thing. And she's just there because she loves him, and we learned that she has prophetic dreaming, that she dreams and tells predictions of things to come. She tells him sometimes it comes to her where things are missing, or like he had mentioned that she helped him find his insurance papers, and she was never near the office when he was packing, but she knew somehow. She knew. So that's really opened up George's mind over the years. He's seen things happen, and the thing that bothers Greta the most is now this isn't, again, a lot of these things are from real life, so I wrote them in homage to my friends or other people that, some of this is my experiences too. But that was an homage for all the people who have a prophetic dream, dreaming ability where they see something that's going to happen, but they don't know when and they don't know where, so they can't stop it, and that's very aggravating. Steve Stockton has that a lot. We talk a lot. He'll have a dream. He'll call me in the middle of the night and say stuff like, I think something's going to happen here, and I don't know how to stop it. And it's a lot of my friends who have that. That's big time burden, because you can't stop the catastrophe from happening. And so when Greta in the last one was having that dream and she was saying Rugaroo, Rugaroo, and George doesn't know what that is. So he asked Dave, they have no signal up there. They can't use the cell phones. They can't look up, stuff on your phone. Let me see what a Rugaroo looks like. He's got to wait to go down the mountain to get a signal to look up for George and see what that is. So that also tells you that they're kind of stuck. They can't just grab technology real quick like that and try to figure out what's going on. But George has it in his mind. Dave now has that in his mind, trying to figure out what's the Rugaroo, what in the world is that? And we've heard from George, who comes up there often and knows the Magees very well, loves them. They're all the couples know each other, Greta and George Steele and the Magees. They know each other very well. They've seen each other often. And he told Dave that Chuck Magee kind of calls all this woo-woo stuff nonsense and tries to keep a lid on it, because why? What happens if you have a rumor of ghosts and things happening? So there's been rumors of black mists. There's been rumors of this black nasty thing grabbing people in the showers and being seen darting in and out the trees. And, so those rumors get out. Of course, old Bob, we found out prequel that old Bob lived in that cabin 22 for a long time, and then he was killed. Well, you and I know that Skeet confessed to the rat, right? When the rat was judging him with one dead eye, and Skeet was messed up enough in the head to try to justify that he had to do it, because old Bob found out that Skeet stole money from him, and they must have had some kind of argument maybe, and he said to the rat, he hit him in the head with a rock and, busted his head open and sunk him in the river so that his body wouldn't easily be found. And it was there quite a while before they found it. So do we know that that's old Bob that's haunting cabin 22? We don't know. Do we think that maybe he was the one that was standing outside the window? Was his ghost the one that was trying, that bothered Joan that night? The thud on the bed and the slithering, sucky sounds of this black, nasty smelling thing that Joan thought was a nightmare, and then woke up that morning to find out that Jacob had seen it too, and it smelled bad, right? Well, the thing that was on the mirror said, "Help me," in a black goo. And Dave has a piece of that in a tissue wrapped in the cardboard from the tissue box, right? And he's got it in his head. He's new to all this, but he's able to figure out it's not the same. The thing that was on his ankle after that thing grabbed him smelled like dirty motor oil. And the thing in his pocket was completely different consistency and smelled different. So we can think about that. So right now, the still has obviously blown inside of a cave. So you can imagine the ricochet on that. And, it's inside of a mountain. We don't know how deep. We know that Jacob followed a rabbit and turned and went in and followed this rabbit in a tiny little, kind of like you have to crouch down sometimes when you go, where they call it splunking. So when you go into caves, sometimes you have to squeeze through a real tight spot to get to a big opening. Well, who else talked about that? Who else talked about being in the caves as a young boy, going around and thinking it was his own because it was his escape from his abusive father? and he felt like the caves were his friend. He could hide stuff there. He said that it was Jeb thinking when he was driving the truck and talking about how his dad abused him and actually, used to smack him around and kicked him in the stomach so bad that it hurt. And that he ran away for a couple of days and stayed in these caves, and that they kind of comforted him. And he had that little spot where he would crawl in, a real tight spot, and it opened up to an inside natural lake in there, and that animals would go in and out, and that was okay. They were kind of like his friends. So I believe at this point in the story, Jeb kind of foreshadowed what Jacob just did. Jacob's walking along the trail, kind of hung back a little bit. Joan and Mike, her older son, walked on a little bit more, and Jacob was distracted by this rabbit and found a secret hidey spot and thought that the rabbit was leading him to treasure or a wonder, and he's just, in all his 6-year-old glory, he's just imagining, pirate treasure being hidden there, and, he's thinking about all that kind of stuff. But where is Jacob? What cave? What part of the mountain? Off the Blue Trail. And George is on his way down after getting a couple of shots of the Swanson's thrush, and I think it's really cool. You guys get to know, but most of the people that hear this or read this in the book that's coming, out when it comes in print, they're not going to know that when you see the Swanson thrush in here, that's him. That's the Swanson thrush. That's the Swanson thrush song. The gold pocket watch that Skeet takes out that he stole from old Bob when he killed him. And he was talking to the rat, and the song it played, my grandmother, whom I dearly love, the one that told me about the herbs and would take me into the woods and whisper in my ear, this is how you do this and this is what this is for, and said it in such a secret thing. Well, that was a treasure to me. So the title of this is Territories and Treasures. Everybody's kind of got their territory. Skeet had his cave territory, and Jeb had his territory, and the Magees have theirs around the cabin, and that whole mountain is kind of the people that come there all the time. That's their treasure and territory. They understand it, and they appreciate it, and they love it, and they take care of it, and that's different treasures to different people, right? So that's that. And Skeet really treasured the fact that he had that old radio, and he thought the songs were just for him, and the Grand Old Opry. And there you go, got Minnie Pearl in there. I had to throw her in there because it was just so neat, just takes you back. And, like I said, the truck, that's a Chevy. That's, around that time. And you're going to hear a golf cart here soon that I had to get a gas golf cart, and I went and found it. I found the sound of a gas golf cart. So all of those things are for you guys, the listener. And what's coming up next? Okay, George is on his way down to try to warn Joan. He's screaming, and she can't hear him. If you've ever been up in this, mountains like that, sometimes sound carries a different way, and sometimes a little sound will carry forever. It's really odd when you're up there in the mountains. But he's yelling and screaming and trying to warn Joan that Jacob just went into this cave. He saw him do it. And she just realized Jacob's missing, and she takes Mike, and she's running back, trying to backtrack, being that mom, all that parent panic starts setting in, right? And here comes Dave and Rage. They're just walking along like he said in the beginning of the Andrew Griffith show, with the fishing pole on his back and watching and enjoying Rage, having a good time, because this is just what Dave needed. Dave needed to get away. He needed the new job in Huntsville. He needed this 2 weeks on this mountain to fish and spend time with this best friend, Rage. So you are going to get to see who these people really are in the next one, who their inner talents are. Are they good? Are they inherently good and full of light? Or are they just evil? you know, and there's some of them too. So what's going on in this mountain? A whole whirlwind of shit, I'm telling you, is about to happen. That was really jam-packed. You know, the Ezra is definitely a ghost there. Are we going to see him again? I don't know. You know, is George going to be able to get down there and tell Joan where Jacob went? I don't know. So let's see in part 4. And I thank you all so much for staying so late. My love goes out to everybody who's in an area where you're having a hard time. I hope this took you away for a little bit. That's my gift to you. And you are giving me back that gift. I love you so much. Have a wonderful evening. I hope to see you back here next Sunday. We have Anna is going to be on to do some angel card reading and tell us how to ground and things like that. And then Stephen and I'll be back Monday, and we'll be back with part 4 of Cabin 22. I love you all, and good night. Don't have any nightmares. Thank you for staying with me. Aunt Edna, Patriot, DB123, Jackie, Carol. I love you all. And if you missed anything, go back and watch it, because it's really starting to get good now, guys. Love you. Keep your feet under the covers. Keep your closet door shut, because there are things that go bump in the night. Good night. Ooh, I can't find it. Hold on, we'll find it. Here we go. Here comes the kitty. Good night, everybody. Be blessed.